Chapter 121. The raging waterfall flowed with a deafening roar as if wanting to smash the rocks, and the dense steam enveloped the entire small valley. At the open ground beneath the waterfall, a bare-chested young man, with a strange black heavy Xian ruler strapped to his back, was dodging continuously with a solemn expression, avoiding the wooden stakes that were relentlessly attacking. Occasionally, he would leap up and dodge like a nimble spirit monkey, his large, muscular body gaining a sense of vitality under the sun's rays. Xiaoyan had been in this small valley for a month, and half of his time over the past month was almost entirely spent dodging these wooden stakes. As a result, he had numerous injuries on his body from being struck by the stakes. Of course, effort yields results. Currently, Xiaoyan could successfully evade the simultaneous attack of 12 wooden stakes, a great improvement compared to a month ago when only 5 stakes made him struggle to dodge. On a large rock near the wooden stakes, old man Yao sat cross-legged, his eyes narrowed as he watched the young man nimbly moving through the gaps between the 12 wooden stakes. In the training area, he nodded slightly, and with another wave of his sleeve, one of the 3 wooden stakes hovering in the air immediately detached and fiercely attacked Xiaoyan. This sudden attack instantly shattered the balance Xiaoyan had established with the 12 stakes. A tiny gap he could have escaped through was now completely blocked by the newly appeared stake. His face became slightly solemn, and his eyes intently focused on the 13 wooden stakes chaotically rushing at him from all directions. A moment later, the stakes quickly closed in, generating a powerful wind pressure that momentarily halted Xiaoyan's breathing. Taking a deep breath, the dou qi in Xiaoyan's body surged out, and he twisted his body in a strange manner, dodging 2 stakes that were rushing straight at his head. Before his body's contortion for the dodge was complete, Xiaoyan's toe suddenly tapped one of the stakes, and his body rapidly shot towards another stake. His head tilted slightly to the side, and a large wooden stake whizzed past his ear. After a month of adaptation, Xiaoyan's dodging speed was far superior to a month ago. The continuous attack of the 12 wooden stakes, although always perilous, had not managed to hit his body even once. The stakes whizzing past his body created a forceful wind pressure that stung Xiaoyan's skin, yet he did not dare to use his dou qi for protection, as every trace of dou qi had to be saved for critical situations. Otherwise, once his dou qi was depleted, he would only have to endure a tragic end, a fate that frequently befell him during this period. The yellow-rank low-class dou qi cultivation method was not enough for Xiaoyan to use comfortably, so he had to be extremely economical in the consumption of every bit of dou qi in his body. If only the cultivation method could evolve one more time, that would be great. I wouldn't have to be this frugal anymore. Having avoided the attack of the 11th wooden stake, Xiaoyan could not help but feel a slight longing in his heart. Just as the 11th wooden stake shot past his body, the 12th one also rushed in viciously. However, Xiaoyan was already prepared for this situation. Standing on the stake, his toes spun slightly, using his foot as the pivot, with apparently only one toe resting on the stake. Instantly, his entire body tilted into a strange, curved line. Whoosh! The stake roared past, missing his body by barely half an inch, the sharp wind pressure making Xiaoyan widen his eyes and suck in a deep breath. Immediately after the 12th wooden stake shot past, Xiaoyan's expression suddenly changed. Behind him, there was unexpectedly a wooden stake rushing in with even greater speed and force. Having adapted to the attacks of the 12 wooden stakes, Xiaoyan had used up 12 cycles of time, and had just managed to grasp their trajectory. Yet, old man Yao had now added a 13th one, leaving him somewhat helpless and at a loss. Sensing the approaching force, Xiaoyan slowly exhaled. At that moment, his eyes suddenly closed. Listening to the somewhat oppressive sound of the wind behind him, the hairs on the back of Xiaoyan's neck gently swayed like tentacles. Relying on the oppressive force, the trajectory of the oncoming wooden stake suddenly appeared vaguely in the mind of the closed-eyed Xiaoyan. With no time-related rules in his mind, Xiaoyan thoroughly analyzed the stake's attack trajectory and the power it contained. The best evasion position naturally appeared in his mind. Outside, seeing Xiaoyan suddenly close his eyes, old Man Yao's eyes lit up slightly. He said in a surprised, hushed voice, "This little fellow, could he be using his soul-sensing power already?" The moment the image of the wooden stake appeared in Xiaoyan's mind, his body also twisted bizarrely. With both hands covering his head, his body fell straight down like an arrow. Just as he fell, the huge wooden stake shot closely past his face, the oppressive force making Xiaoyan's ears buzz faintly. Having perilously escaped the final blow of the 13th wooden stake, Xiaoyan's toe tapped the stake's body, and his figure shot out like lightning before landing steadily on the ground. He immediately took out a set of clothes and casually put them on. Exhaling, Xiaoyan did not speak to old Man Yao. He immediately sat down on the ground, quickly took out a small bottle from his storage ring, and tilted the mouth of the bottle, letting 2 medicinal pellets roll out. "TSK, the qi returning pills are being used up so fast. Looks like I'll have to go and pick more herbs later." Looking at the 2 remaining medicinal pellets, Xiaoyan shook his head helplessly, put one into his mouth, and then immediately assumed a cultivation posture with both hands. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Xiaoyan quickly entered a cultivation state. Through a month of training, he knew that the moment after his dou qi was exhausted was the best time for cultivation, as the cells in his body would absorb energy more powerfully than at any other time. With steady breathing, he entered the cultivation state. Faint energy airflow rotated around Xiaoyan's body, and whenever it touched the pores on his skin's surface, it was greedily sucked in, like liquid touching a sponge. Maintaining continuous cultivation, the energy surrounding Xiaoyan became denser and denser, showing no signs of diminishing. Tapping his finger on the rock wall, old Man Yao calculated Xiaoyan's cultivation time. His eyebrows suddenly furrowed. Xiaoyan's cultivation today seemed to be lasting a little longer than usual. According to old Man Yao's calculation, the dou qi in Xiaoyan's body should have been completely replenished by now. So why was there still no sign of stopping? Could it be a breakthrough to a 6-star dou practitioner? The tapping finger paused for a moment. Old Man Yao's heart stirred, and he chuckled softly, saying, "Not bad. According to my calculations, he was supposed to reach 6-star in another half a month, but this little rascal has saved half a month. It seems that the previous battle in the jungle did him a good deal of service." Intently staring at Xiaoyan, old Man Yao immediately noticed something was amiss. Frowning, he said, "The breakthrough is a bit forced. Looks like I'll have to lend him some external help." After a brief contemplation, old Man Yao clenched his hand, and a jet of energy shot out from his hand, directly striking the top of Xiaoyan's head, instantly waking him up from his cultivation state. Having his cultivation interrupted, Xiaoyan glared angrily at old Man Yao. A breakthrough opportunity like this was not something one encountered easily. "You fool. If you forcefully push the breakthrough, even if you successfully advance to 6-star dou practitioner, you'll have to rest for a month. Do you have that much time to waste?" Old Man Yao scolded, glancing at the angry Xiaoyan. Hearing that, Xiaoyan immediately slumped down. Losing a month for a breakthrough was not worth it. He sighed with a hint of regret and said, "What a good opportunity." Rolling his eyes, old Man Yao pouted and said, "I haven't even finished speaking. Right now, I'm adding 2 more wooden stakes. I'll be using 15 in total." 15. Xiaoyan's eyes felt like they were about to tear. He wished he could give old Man Yao the middle finger. 13 was already his limit. Wouldn't 15 just get him knocked away? "You fool, aren't you going to take down the heavy Xian ruler?" Looking at Xiaoyan's sulking face, old Man Yao scolded with a mix of laughter and tears, "You just need one chance to break through. Right now, don't let it be delayed." Hearing that he could remove the heavy Xian ruler, Xiaoyan's eyes lit up slightly. His 2 feet squatted slightly, and with a low shout, his hands grasped the heavy ruler and pulled it out with force, then heavily placing it on the ground. With the heavy Xian ruler off his body, Xiaoyan felt his body lighten considerably. The Dou Qi in his body circulated fiercely, and a sense of surging power spread throughout Xiaoyan's entire body, accompanied by cracking sounds from within. Once again feeling the pleasure of being reborn, Xiaoyan felt as though he had drunk a bowl of cold water in the scorching heat. All the pores on his body seemed to open up. Tapping his toe lightly on the ground, Xiaoyan felt his body was as light as the wind. He looked up at the 15 wooden stakes in the air, smirked, stamped his foot lightly on the ground, and his body shot up like a cannonball, landing steadily on one of the stakes. Come on. Raising both hands, Xiaoyan waved them at Old Man Yao. Having cast off all restraints, he was extremely confident in enduring the attack of the 15 wooden stakes. Ambitious. Looking at Xiaoyan, Old Man Yao smiled. Waving his hand, the more than 10 wooden stakes in the air began to move, then rushed fiercely towards Xiaoyan with powerful force. Watching the flying stakes, Xiaoyan slightly curled his lips, his toes lightly tapping. He was actually taking the initiative to meet them. Under the control of Old Man Yao, the 15 wooden stakes formed a formation with no gaps. The fierce force from them caused the grass and plants on the ground to scatter everywhere. Without the heavy Xian ruler, Xiaoyan's speed nearly doubled. The resistance under his feet no longer caused him any hesitation. Within the dense offensive of the wooden stakes, the young man's figure was half hidden, half visible. Xiaoyan, unexpectedly, dodged all the successive attacks of the 15 wooden stakes. Watching the youth's sensitive evasion, Old Man Yao nodded slightly, a hint of appreciation flashing in his eyes. Xiaoyan's performance, having shed his restraints, was a bit beyond his expectations. When the last wooden stake was perilously dodged by Xiaoyan, the 15 stakes in the air suddenly stopped. Slowly exhaling, Xiaoyan stood straight on the wooden stake, ate the last qi returning pill, and after a moment of silence, the faint energy airflow suddenly circulated strangely around him, then frantically poured into his body. As the energy airflow grew more abundant, a golden light appeared around Xiaoyan's body. His handsome face, like warm jade, suddenly had his eyes snap open after a moment. And 2 beams of bright light shot out from his pitch-black pupils. Taking a deep breath, Xiaoyan turned back to look at Old Man Yao sitting on the large rock, a brilliant smile on his face. Breakthrough. Hearing this, Old Man Yao smiled, a hint of joy also appearing in his eyes. After breaking through to 6-star Dou practitioner, Xiaoyan's strength increased significantly. After another 3 days of practice with the wooden stakes, he was already able to dodge the 15 stakes while wearing the heavy Xian ruler. This clear progress made him beam with joy. After adapting to the attack of the 15 stakes, Xiaoyan was no longer bruised all over as he was before. The relaxed life after the tension made Xiaoyan feel a little enjoyment. In the dense forest, Xiaoyan slowly walked with the heavy Xian ruler on his back, his eyes constantly scanning his surroundings. Today's training was over, and his purpose for going out was to search for the medicinal ingredients needed to refine the qi returning pill. The qi returning pill was very important for Xiaoyan's cultivation, as it could save up to half the time needed to recover Dou Qi. And time was something Xiaoyan could not afford to lack right now. Although his strength had grown and Xiaoyan had become a legitimate first-rank alchemist, the qi returning pill belonged to the second rank of medicinal pills. Given his current strength, he could not refine it yet, so the refining task had to rely on Old Man Yao. Furthermore, the medicinal ingredients for refining the qi returning pill were relatively rare. Initially, in Wuten City, he had only found enough ingredients to refine a few dozen pills. Normally, the search would take up a considerable amount of Xiaoyan's time. However, what made Xiao Yan breathe a sigh of relief was that the medicinal ingredients in the magical beast mountain range were quite abundant. Out of the 5 necessary ingredients for refining the qi returning pill, Xiao Yan had already found 4, and the quantity was not small. If he could find the last and most important ingredient, the spirit returning red fruit, he would be able to refine an ample supply of medicinal pills for Xiao Yan's use. The spirit returning red fruit usually grew in places where the energy was relatively dense. Of course, this was not absolute, but searching based on this clue was still much better than Xiao Yan groping around blindly and searching randomly. Thanks to his excellent soul-sensing power, Xiao Yan could vaguely sense where the heaven and earth energy was relatively abundant, and his current route was leading him to the place with the densest energy. Noon was the time in the morning when magical beasts were least active. Xiao Yan understood this, so he specifically chose this time to search for medicinal ingredients. Along the way, he encountered very few magical beasts out foraging. Occasionally meeting 1 or 2, he would detect them first and evade. His figure quickly darted past a thicket, and a pile of rubble appeared in his sight. Behind the rubble was a cliff face covered with a proliferation of vines. Looking at the rubble, Xiao Yan rubbed his hands. The concentration of energy here was indeed the place he had sensed. His sharp gaze swept over the rubble. After a moment, Xiao Yan's eyes fixed on a small purple tree behind the cliff face. The trunk extended out from the cliff, and on its branches, a crimson fruit, half hidden among the leaves, emitted a faint fragrance. Spirit returning red fruit. Looking at the small tree, Xiao Yan let out a breath. After 2 days of searching, he had finally found it. Although the ingredient was right in front of him, Xiao Yan was not in a hurry to take it. He knew that medicinal herbs in places with dense energy mostly had magical beasts guarding them. His eyes carefully scanned the surroundings, but he did not spot even half a shadow of a magical beast. His eyebrows furrowed slightly. Xiao Yan waited for a moment longer, and seeing no beast appear, he left his hiding spot with suspicion and cautiously walked toward the small purple tree. As his footsteps drew closer, a sudden chill arose in Xiao Yan's heart. He abruptly stopped, frowned, and then quickly turned and ran. Crash! The moment Xiao Yan turned around, a colossal white shadow, like a small mountain, heavily leaped down from the top of the cliff, completely blocking Xiao Yan's retreat path. Looking at the suddenly appearing magical beast, cold sweat broke out on Xiao Yan's back. His body remained motionless in place, not daring to move even slightly. Appearing before Xiao Yan was a white magic ape. This magic ape was probably 2 to 3 meters tall. Its entire body was covered in white fur, fangs protruded from its mouth, and a brutal killing intent emanated from its large red eyes. Gazing at the magic ape, Xiao Yan took a cold breath. Second-tier magical beast, the blizzard magic ape. Rumble, rumble. The magic ape's red eyes stared intensely at the human who had suddenly trespassed into its territory. Its 2 claws slammed into the ground, smashing several pieces of rubble into dust. Seeing the magic ape not concealing its killing intent in the slightest, Xiao Yan swallowed a mouthful of saliva. A second-tier magical beast was equivalent to a human Do Master level expert. With his current strength, fighting a second-tier magical beast was undoubtedly courting death. Master! He called out in his heart, but there was no response. Xiao Yan's face immediately fell in distress. Don't mess with me, this is a second-tier magical beast. After his plea for help yielded no result, Xiao Yan had no choice but to shift his gaze to the magical beast in front of him, carefully scrutinizing it. But he suddenly discovered a terrifying wound on the magic ape's abdomen. The wound had almost completely ripped open the magic ape's abdomen. When it moved its body, a stream of fresh blood continuously poured out, staining the white fur red. Looking at the horrific appearance of the wound, it must have been inflicted by the claw of some fierce magical beast. Injured magical beasts are usually extremely frenzied, and unfortunately for Xiaoyan, he had intruded into the territory of this wounded magic ape. Intently staring at the terrifying, continuously bleeding wound, Xiaoyan narrowed his eyes. His heart stirred. Although under normal circumstances it would be very difficult for him to defeat a second-tier magic ape, the current situation was advantageous to him. Damn it, you brought this upon yourself. Cursing resentfully, Xiaoyan used one hand to remove the heavy Xian ruler from his back. He then fiercely plunged it into the ground. In the current situation, he could not afford to hold back anymore. Xiaoyan's action, to the frenzied magic ape, was undoubtedly a form of provocation. Instantly, the magic ape heavily beat its chest with its two claws, issuing repeated clang-clang sounds. Moving its 2 feet, the magic ape, with its deep red eyes, charged at Xiaoyan. White energy quickly condensed on its massive claws, and the surrounding air instantly dropped in temperature. Tapping his toe lightly on the ground, Xiaoyan let out a low shout, "Purple cloud wings, open." Following the sound, a pair of black, 2-meter-long eagle wings suddenly sprouted from Xiaoyan's back. Borrowing the power of the 2 wings, Xiaoyan's toes quickly glided over more than 10 meters on the ground. Source: https://truyenful.vn. Roar. The magic ape let out a loud roar. White cold energy condensed into a spherical shape, then shot out from its hand, firing toward Xiaoyan. A month of speed training had given Xiaoyan a nimble physique like a spirit monkey. His body dodged in a bizarre manner without the slightest effort. After dodging the attack, Xiaoyan's palm suddenly clenched. Aiming at the wound on the magic ape's abdomen, he let out a low, cold shout, "Absorption palm." As soon as the sound stopped, a fierce suction force erupted from Xiaoyan's palm. Even the rubble on the ground was unexpectedly drawn toward Xiaoyan. Roar. The fierce suction force caused the magic ape's body to sway. But after it stabilized itself, a burst of intense pain came from its abdomen. Looking down, it saw that the wound had not yet closed, and blood was gushing out like a fountain, ceaselessly flowing. The intense pain made the magic ape lose its reason even more, and it charged toward Xiaoyan. Relying on his nimble figure, Xiaoyan consistently avoided confronting any of the magic ape's attacks head-on. The center of his palm ceaselessly emitted a fierce suction force, drawing the blood out of the magic ape's body. On the rubble, a bizarre scene continued to unfold. The enraged magic ape continuously attacked the tiny figure. It had lost its reason, and was no different from an ordinary savage beast. However, that small, fly-like figure, with every wave of his hand, would draw a large pool of blood from the magic ape's abdomen. On the rubble, dark red fresh blood had almost stained every rock, appearing somewhat horrific. Fleeing around the magic ape once more, just as Xiaoyan was about to lose his endurance, a powerful suction force unexpectedly pulled out the internal organs from the magic ape's abdomen completely. Having suffered a fatal blow, the magic ape's roars slowly subsided. Its red eyes widened and its body, like a small mountain, heavily collapsed. When the magic ape fell, Xiaoyan's entire body was sore and numb. Ignoring the blood-soaked ground, he lay down directly, gasping heavily for breath. Lying on the rubble for a long time, Xiaoyan slowly recovered a bit of his strength. Looking up at the massive corpse of the magic ape nearby, a hint of fear involuntarily rose in his heart. If the magic ape hadn't been severely wounded, if it hadn't lost its reason due to the pain, and if he hadn't just broken through to 6-star Do practitioner the day before, he would probably be lying here dead today. Little fellow, you actually managed to kill a second-tier magical beast across ranks. TSK, very capable indeed. Old Man Yao flew out from the ring, looked at the massive corpse, and couldn't help but say with a smile, fiercely glaring at the smiling old Man Yao, Xiaoyan angrily sat up, then assumed a cultivation posture, and began to recover the dou qi depleted in his body. Watching Xiaoyan close his eyes to recover, Old Man Yao smiled, suspended himself in midair, and guarded him. Half an hour later, Xiaoyan slowly opened his eyes. Although his body was still a little sore, his dou qi was gradually becoming full again. The energy here is not bad. Muttering to himself, Xiaoyan stood up, clenched his fists, and frowned, saying, "The current flame mantra is really too poor. It can only support a little over 10 minutes of combat. If this magic ape had persevered a little longer, the one to fall would probably have been me. Indeed, it is very poor." Old Man Yao actually agreed with this point. Although the flame mantra had excellent potential, its initial starting point was too low, and its sustainability in combat was too weak. Sigh, when will I be able to find a suitable heavenly flame? Xiaoyan sighed, looking up at the sky. The unevolved flame mantra was always his weak point. Sighing and shaking his head, Xiaoyan walked over to the tree, picked the more than 30 spirit-returning red fruits, and finally stored them in a jade bottle inside his storage ring. After storing the spirit-returning red fruits, Xiaoyan took out a dagger from his storage ring, walked over to the side of the blizzard magic ape's body, and cut open its head. Is there a magic core? Cutting open the magic ape's head, a white magic core that emitted a faint cold aura appeared in Xiaoyan's eyes. Xiaoyan joyfully took out the magic core. This was the first time he had seen a magic core of this rank. He held it in his hand with some excitement. The faint cold aura made him shiver slightly, and he immediately put it carefully into his storage ring. Let's go. Having finished gathering everything, Xiaoyan raised his hand. And Old Man Yao instantly shot back into the ring. Rubbing the ancient ring on his hand, Xiaoyan put the heavy Xian ruler on the ground back onto his back, and only then did he walk away steadily. Leaving the rocky area, Xiaoyan went through the dense forest to return to the small valley. Because the battle just now had left Xiaoyan covered in blood, his body was now coated with a layer of medicinal liquid. This medicinal liquid could mask the scent of fresh blood, a necessity when in the forest. Secretly walking for another distance, Xiaoyan's footsteps suddenly stopped. He seemed to have sensed that not far to his left, human voices were faintly transmitting. Frowning slightly, Xiaoyan's eyes scanned the surroundings, and he quickly retreated into a thicket of grass, intently watching the outside. Not long after Xiaoyan hid in the grass, two figures slowly appeared in his sight. When his eyes swept past the chests of the two men, his expression slightly changed, and he coldly said in his heart, "Are they people from the Wolf-Head mercenary group? I think we should stop here. We shouldn't go any deeper into the magical beast mountain range. A single slap from the magical beasts in there could kill us." Slowly walking forward, one mercenary said with a worried expression. Hearing his companion's words, the other mercenary also nodded helplessly and said fiercely, "Damn it, where is that brat finally hiding? The leader has issued a death order. We must find that bastard, whether he is alive or dead. Maybe he's already been swallowed by some magical beast, and is about to be excreted." Heh, that's possible too. Judging by that guy's age, he doesn't look like a veteran. Forget it, let's stop searching for today. We'll go back and report, then continue tomorrow. One mercenary stopped, looked at the somewhat gloomy forest and frowned. Yeah, it's a pity. That brat is worth 8,000 gold coins. If we were lucky enough to run into him, with the strength of 2 5-star Dou practitioners like us, capturing him shouldn't be difficult. The remaining mercenary nodded, then spoke with a hint of regret. Let's go. Consider him lucky. The mercenary smiled and nodded. Just as he turned around, his expression suddenly changed. A fierce energy attack as fast as lightning struck the area of his head. The sudden attack made the mercenary instinctively reach out his hand, heavily blocking the punch, but the energy force was far stronger than he had anticipated. The moment the two sides abruptly clashed, the mercenary's face turned pale. His chest was aching, and a mouthful of fresh blood sprayed out. His body was sent flying backward. "Kill him!" While flying, the mercenary hurriedly shouted at his companion, who was stunned by the sudden turn of events. However, before his shout finished, he was horrified to realize that his body, which was flying backward, was being pulled back by a powerful force. In mid-air, a figure suddenly appeared. Upon colliding with the mercenary, an elbow fiercely struck his throat. Instantly, a cracking sound echoed in the deserted forest. Thud. In mid-air, the mercenary's feeble body fell, heavily crashing onto the ground, causing dust to scatter. The sudden attack and the mercenary's death only took a few short seconds. By the time the remaining mercenary recovered from his shock, he found that his companion had stopped breathing. Startled, the mercenary looked up at the figure covered in blood, stammering, "Who are you? Why are you attacking us? Ah, aren't you looking for me?" Slowly raising his head, the young man's handsome face was revealed. "You, Xiaoyan." His pupils contracted. After shouting this name, the mercenary suddenly turned and ran. As he ran, his hands quickly took out a flare. Just as he was about to launch it, the suction force from behind surged, and the flare in his grasp slipped out of his hand. Raising his hand to catch the flare, Xiaoyan casually played with it for a moment, then stored it in his storage ring. Stamping his foot forcefully, his figure shot toward the mercenary. Seeing Xiaoyan's extremely fast speed, a look of terror appeared on the mercenary's face. With a clang, he drew the long sword at his waist and then viciously slashed it toward Xiaoyan. Tilting his body slightly, Xiaoyan easily dodged the mercenary's attack. Xiaoyan's left leg shot out like lightning. Instantly, a foot fiercely kicked the mercenary's abdomen. Hit severely in the abdomen, the mercenary let out a loud cry, a trail of blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. His footsteps stumbled backward. A few steps. The figure in front of him suddenly flashed, and the long sword in his hand was snatched away. Immediately after, something cold as ice was pressed against his neck. "If you dare to move, I'll slit your throat." The voice, like that of a demon, slowly rang in the mercenary's ear, making his footsteps freeze in place. If you kill me, the wolf-head mercenary group won't let you off." Cold sweat profusely ran down his forehead, and the mercenary said with a dry voice, "Ah, not let me off. You weren't planning to let me off anyway, right?" Smiling sarcastically, Xiaoyan calmly said, "Answer a few of my questions. If I answer, will you let me go?" "You don't have the right to choose." Xiaoyan smiled faintly, pressing the long sword slightly closer. "Do you believe I'll carve 10 wounds onto your body, and then throw you into a nest of corpse-devouring ants?" Hearing that, the mercenary's face instantly turned ashen. His 2 feet continuously trembled. He hadn't expected that this young man, who looked barely over 10 years old, could be so vicious. "What do you want to ask?" Muli found what from the stone box in the cave. "He didn't have the key either, did he?" Xiaoyan asked with a smile. Muli, the young leader, took both the stone box and the stone pedestal back, "But I am not qualified to know what's inside." Seeing that the mercenary did not seem to be lying, Xiaoyan frowned slightly. "Is the wolf-head mercenary group currently offering a bounty for anyone who captures me?" "Yes." Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, the mercenary nodded with difficulty. "Since the young leader returned, the leader said that anyone who knows of your whereabouts and reports it to the wolf-head mercenary group will receive a huge reward." I didn't expect them to want to fight to the death." Smiling gently, Xiaoyan's eyes held a chilling killing intent. "The last thing, is little fairy doctor all right?" "She's fine." Since returning to Qingshan town, Little fairy doctor has stayed inside the 10,000 medicine house. The leader hasn't dared to lay a hand on her. The mercenary's eyes darted around. In his hand, a dagger silently slid down from his sleeve. Oh. Nodding slightly, Xiaoyan looked up and suddenly smiled indifferently, saying, "It looks like you also know that I won't let you return alive, right? Therefore you die." A fierce light suddenly appeared in his eyes. The dagger in the mercenary's hand abruptly stabbed towards Xiaoyan's chest. Smiling calmly, Xiaoyan lightly stepped back. The long sword in his hand slashed out casually, and a streak of blood appeared on the tip of the sword. Looking at the mercenary convulsing on the ground, Xiaoyan let out a cold laugh. He had never intended to let this person go back to report the news, and thus bring a large group of people to hunt him down. TSK, it seems the leader of the wolf head mercenary group is also a ruthless fellow. No wonder he could raise a son like Muli. With a chilling laugh, Xiaoyan carefully cleaned up the nearby traces, and then threw the bodies of the two men into the deep abyss far away. "Master, it seems our training should be intensified a little. In just 1 month, they've been able to reach this far. Maybe after a while, they'll be able to find this place." Glancing at the bottomless abyss, Xiaoyan clapped his hands and pouted. "Indeed, we should be a bit more focused." From inside the ring, old Man Yao's calm laughter was transmitted. Blinking his eyes, Xiaoyan laughed lightly, interlaced his fingers, and said with a smile, "Master, then when can I learn the D-rank Do technique?" "Heh, little fellow. Don't think that D-rank and Xian-rank Do techniques are the same. If you want to learn this, you must be prepared to suffer." Old Man Yao said with a mischievous laugh. "Have I not suffered enough yet?" Rubbing his face, Xiaoyan smiled and turned to walk toward the small valley. "I'm really looking forward to seeing just how powerful this so-called D-rank Do technique is." The atmosphere in the Great Hall was somewhat heavy. Several figures were seated inside, among them was also the person who once held deep resentment towards Xiaoyan, Muli. At the head seat, above the Great Hall, a middle-aged man had a slightly gloomy expression. His finger was lightly tapping on the table, and he broke the silence in the room. "We just received news that a small team from the search party sent out today has gone missing at a certain location in the Magical Beast Mountain Range." The middle-aged man's voice slowly echoed heavily in the room. "Father. Perhaps they were attacked by magical beasts." Muli replied with a casual laugh. The situation of being killed by a magical beast was very common in the Magical Beast Mountain Range. Hearing Muli's address, this middle-aged man was the leader of the wolf-head mercenary group, Mushi. If they were attacked by magical beasts, there would surely be some traces left behind. However, the mercenaries who went to provide support after searching the area where those two were responsible found no trace of a battle whatsoever, excluding the possibility of accidentally slipping off a cliff, a mistake that only these new mercenaries often make. "I believe they were attacked by someone else, and the disappearance of the battle traces must have been caused by that person." Mushi shook his head, speaking indifferently. "You're not suspecting Xiaoyan of being the perpetrator, are you?" Hearing this, Muli was slightly startled. He shook his head and replied, "I've exchanged blows with that guy before. With that kind of strength, wanting to kill 2 5-star Do practitioner mercenaries before they could even fire a flare is impossible. Regardless of whether it was him or not, tomorrow, send a few people to search that area carefully one more time," Mushi said in a low voice. With his cautious nature, like that of a poisonous snake, he would not overlook any slight oversight. "All right, that's fine." Muli shrugged, appearing resigned but still nodded. "Has the stone box you took from the cave been opened yet?" Mushi suddenly asked, sweeping his gaze around the great hall. "The key to the stone box is in Xiaoyan's hands. Although I've invited the best locksmith in Qingshan town, the hope doesn't seem Very high. Muli said with a frown. If it really can't be opened, then try to break it open by force. If someone could casually leave 70,000 gold coins and a number of precious medicinal herbs in a cave like that, the strength of the owner must not be low. Therefore, the items he left behind should certainly be extraordinary. Mushi clenched his fist tightly, a streak of greed flashing in his eyes. Yes. Muli nodded, licked his lips and inquired softly, Father, what do you intend to do about little fairy doctor? Do you know what she took from the cave? Seeing Muli shake his head, Mushi's eyes narrowed. He waved his hand and pondered, saying, Don't lay a hand on her for now. That woman's reputation in Xianxia town is quite high. Taking rash action might cause resentment among the solo mercenaries. Are we just going to leave it at that, letting her live peacefully at the 10,000 medicine house? Heh heh. A peaceful life? How could that be? Tomorrow have someone spread a rumor, saying that little fairy doctor obtained the relics of a certain powerful expert, and that these relics are extremely valuable, containing a Xian rank Do technique. Mushi chuckled, saying coldly, that little fairy doctor, although her medical skills are very high, her personal strength is too weak. Moreover, not everyone in this world is benevolent. There's always some greed in people's hearts. They will try to get that relic from little fairy doctor. Dealing with these people will be enough to give her a massive headache. That's a good move. If even the 10,000 medicine house is eventually moved by this relic, then little fairy doctor's protection will be completely gone. Ha ha. Capturing her at that point will be as easy as flipping a hand. A smug look appeared at the corner of Muli's mouth, and he laughed loudly. Nodding slightly, Mushi's hand gently stroked the scar below his ear, and he said faintly, Little fairy doctor is no threat. The person I worry about the most is the one you mentioned, that brat, Xiaoyan. Muli's smiling face suddenly stiffened, and a hint of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. To be so young and already have reached above the 2-star Do practitioner level, his potential is indeed very strong, enough to make me pay attention. Furthermore, that brat, not even 20 years old, doesn't show any of the arrogance of youth. Moreover, he can hide his true strength very deeply. If it weren't for that final life or death moment, no one would have guessed that a single palm strike from him could repel you. As Mushi's voice echoed, a trace of killing intent gradually rose on his plump cheeks. This kind of potential, if he's an enemy, must be completely destroyed before he fully develops. Otherwise, if he seeks revenge later, we certainly won't be able to recover. Mushi said coldly, rubbing his finger below his scar. Recalling how Xiaoyan, trapped in a desperate and perilous situation in the cave, could still calmly choose the most perfect method to break the siege. Muli's fingers trembled slightly. Having this kind of enemy made one feel restless and unable to sleep. Tomorrow, I will double the size of the search team, and also raise the bounty and reward by 2 times. We must find that guy in the shortest possible time. Find him, we must find him. Clenching his fist, Muli said chillingly. Seeing how the father and son had to be so wary just to deal with a young man barely over 10 years old, the high-ranking members of the Wolf-Head mercenary group sitting in the Great Hall felt a slight inward ridicule. However, outwardly, they still pretended to respectfully accept the order. The waterfall roared and heavily poured onto the rock face, instantly creating dull, thunderous sounds that echoed throughout the small valley. Standing next to the pool beneath the waterfall, Xiaoyan looked at the 10 large wooden piles deeply driven into the flowing water. A look of distress appeared on his plump cheeks. He turned to old Man Yao next to him and said with a bitter smile, Master, you don't mean for me to cultivate down there, do you? That's right. Old Man Yao smiled and said, I told you before, don't think that just anyone can learn D rank and Xian rank Do techniques. To cultivate these types of techniques, you must meet my specified conditions. Hurry, give me the heavy Xian ruler. Reaching out his hand, old Man Yao took the strange black heavy ruler from Xiao Yan's back. The heavy Xian ruler on Xiao Yan's back originally weighed 1,000 jin, yet in old Man Yao's hands, it felt only slightly heavy, causing his arm to sink a little. Holding up the massive black ruler, old Man Yao smiled faintly and asked, "Do you want to witness a D-rank Do technique with your own eyes?" Hearing that, Xiao Yan's eyes lit up, and his head nodded continuously like a chicken pecking rice. Smiling faintly, old Man Yao held the heavy Xian ruler in his hand, his body slowly floated into the air, and then gradually moved toward the center of the pool before finally stopping. Looking down at the water surface 4 or 5 meters below, old Man Yao raised his head to look at the waterfall in front of him, which resembled a colossal, yet soft, silver dragon. Slowly exhaling, old Man Yao's eyes narrowed. A moment later, they snapped open. Instantly, a terrifying aura that Xiao Yan had never encountered before, like a giant dragon just awakened, suddenly erupted from within old Man Yao's body. Underneath the aura, the surface of the pool beneath old Man Yao's feet suddenly seemed to boil, continuously churning like a white froth. This area of churning water then began to spread from beneath old Man Yao's feet, finally stopping its expansion only after completely covering the entire surface of the pool. Staring wide-eyed at the unusual sight in the pool, a sense of terror arose in Xiao Yan's heart. Old Man Yao's current appearance was completely different from the indifferent old man he was before. At this moment, the old man looked like a saber in its sheath, vaguely revealing a dense saber gleam. The sharp aura made people afraid to look directly at him. This, perhaps, is what a true expert looks like. He sighed softly under his breath. A moment later, Xiao Yan's eyes burned with fervor. He believed that one day, he would reach this level. Above the surface of the pool, the indifferent old Man Yao slowly raised the ruler in his hand. The peculiar lines on the ruler's surface, which Xiao Yan found strange, now emitted a crimson, fiery glow. The black ruler slashed through the air, causing the surrounding space to become slightly illusory. The firelight gradually intensified like the setting sun, and the black ruler became scorching red. Old Man Yao suddenly let out a low, deep shout, and his figure abruptly moved. His feet slowly took steps in midair. Under the sun's rays, an afterimage appeared, manifesting a sight that made people's hearts tremble. Stunned, Xiao Yan remained silent for a long time, watching the afterimage in the air. He dared not imagine that old Man Yao's speed could be so terrifying. The afterimage gradually faded, and old Man Yao's figure appeared, but it was as if he had teleported, instantly appearing about 10 zhang away, directly beneath the massive waterfall. Compared to the colossal waterfall, old Man Yao's small figure was like an ant standing before a painting, extremely inconspicuous. But at this moment, the small figure of the ant-like man possessed a might far more terrifying than the waterfall itself. The waterfall poured down with a roar, generating immense wind, but it could not make the solitary, small figure of the old man move even slightly. Story source, full story. The body that was rushing forward suddenly stopped in an instant. His toe stamped in midair, and his body spun 180 degrees. The glow on the black ruler in old Man Yao's hand grew brighter and brighter, eventually becoming so intense that Xiao Yan had to squint his eyes. D-rank Do technique, flame-splitting wave-devouring ruler. In the empty valley, a dull sound like thunder suddenly rang out, and immediately afterward, a wave of heat spread almost throughout the valley. Boom! Above the vast surface of the pool, countless colossal columns of water violently shot high into the air. Amidst the water columns filling the sky, a massive crimson light suddenly flashed. Wherever the crimson light passed, the water columns instantly turned into mist, causing the surroundings to be completely filled with steam. Thump! The crimson light, like a bolt of lightning, streaked across the surface of the pool, creating a water column about 10 meters high, and then heavily slammed into the roaring waterfall. Boom, boom, boom. The tremendous sounds of explosive thunder continuously echoed in the valley, and countless pieces of rubble fell from the cliff face. Covering his ears with both hands, Xiaoyan stared slack-jawed at the spectacle created by this single move. After a long while, he managed to swallow a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. His gaze suddenly turned toward the waterfall, but at this moment, the area was completely filled with steam, entirely obscuring his vision. A gust of wind blew out from the surface of the pool, causing the steam within the valley to rapidly dissipate. After the steam vanished, the shape of the waterfall finally and slowly revealed itself. Staring wide-eyed at the appearing waterfall, Xiaoyan was stunned for a moment. He then slowly closed his eyes and deeply inhaled a cold breath. A sense of dizziness arose in his mind. At this moment, the colossal, roaring waterfall had been forcefully severed. On the immense cliff face of the waterfall, a fissure more than 10 zhang long and 3 or 4 zhang deep appeared, striking his eye. On both sides of the fissure, countless small cracks appeared all over the cliff face, looking like tiger stripes. The water flowing over the cliff above the waterfall paused for more than 20 seconds before slowly starting to flow down again, and the immense fissure on the rock was also gradually being covered up. This is the might of a D-rank Dou technique. Gently rubbing his chest with his hand, Xiaoyan felt a sense of shock in his heart. In midair, old Man Yao slowly descended. Seeing Xiaoyan's startled expression, he smiled faintly. His aged finger gently tapped Xiaoyan's forehead, and instantly, countless pieces of information poured into Xiaoyan's mind. Flame-splitting wave-devouring ruler, a D-rank Dou technique. When cultivated to great accomplishment, a mere lift of the hand and stomp of the foot can cleave mountains and cut through waves. The introduction was extremely simple but contained immense power and a frenzied aura, which made Xiaoyan feel a little dizzy from excitement. Plunging the heavy Xian ruler he held into the ground, old Man Yao rubbed his hands, gestured with his chin toward the 10 wooden stakes beneath the waterfall, and said with a smile, "Starting today, you must persevere in your cultivation beneath this waterfall. Only when you can firmly hold your position on the 13 wooden stakes and execute the thrusts, slashes, and chops in the water 300 times, will you be able to initially utilize the flame-splitting wave-devouring ruler. However, you must remember one thing: with your current strength, you can only use the flame-splitting wave-devouring ruler once at most. If you forcefully use it a second time, you will suffer extremely severe internal injuries, which might even affect your future potential. Therefore, you must absolutely not use this technique until the very last moment." When he reached the end, old Man Yao's voice held a hint of sternness. Nodding, Xiaoyan followed old Man Yao's gaze up to the waterfall, where the water slammed against the large rocks, creating deafening sounds. This made him shiver. He chuckled dryly and said, "With such a powerful impact force, wouldn't I be completely smashed without Dou Qi defense?" "Perhaps." Lowering his hand, old Man Yao smiled faintly and extended his hand toward Xiaoyan, saying, "During cultivation, you must wear the heavy Xian ruler. And in the future, if you want to use the flame-splitting wave-devouring ruler, you must use this item. As the might of a D-rank Dou technique will be reduced by more than 30% if you don't use it. Furthermore, bring out all the medicinal pills you refined last time. You won't need those for this cultivation session. You must completely rely on yourself to recover your Dou Qi." Old Man Yao directly took the storage ring from Xiaoyan's hand and said with a smile. Watching old Man Yao snatch his storage ring, Xiaoyan helplessly curled his lips. He turned his head to look at the massive pile of wooden stakes set up beneath the waterfall, gritting his teeth and fiercely saying, "Is there any suffering I haven't tasted yet? Could someone make me too afraid to do this? For the D-rank Dou technique, I'll risk my life." Gritting his teeth and letting out an angry roar, Xiaoyan stripped off his clothes, then forcefully leaped onto a large rock, and rushed fiercely toward one of the wooden stakes with great vigor. Boom! The moment his 2 feet landed on the Wooden stake. Before he even had time to summon Do Qi for protection, his body was sent flying deep into the fierce current. Xiaoyan only felt a jolt of numbness on his back. The powerful impact force unceremoniously submerged him deep underwater. Emerging from the pool, Xiaoyan spat out a mouthful of pool water and angrily shouted, "Today, I'll fight you to the death." After shouting, Xiaoyan climbed out of the water, continued to leap onto the large rock, and then forcefully jumped onto the wooden stake. Boom! Damn it! Boom! Motherf *****. Boom! Sitting on the large rock next to the pool, Old Man Yao smiled as he watched the stubborn young man relentlessly battling the waterfall. He smiled faintly, a trace of joy flashing in his eyes. The great sound of the waterfall day after day echoed in the valley, year after year, reverberating. The humid steam almost completely isolated this valley from the hot outside world. Beneath the roaring waterfall, which flowed like a silver dragon, a bare-chested young man, with his teeth tightly clenched, gripped a large black heavy sword in his hand. He ceaselessly thrust, chopped, and slashed into the water current in front of him. Every time the heavy Xian ruler was wielded, it sent water spray scattering everywhere. His 2 feet were like tree roots, firmly sticking to the wooden stake. Pale yellow Do Qi, half hidden and half visible, emanated from Xiaoyan's body. Every time water splashed onto his body, a faint mist rose up. Wielding the heavy sword vigorously in the water current required extremely great exertion of physical strength. This young man had managed to hold his position on the wooden stake for a while. Now, every time he wielded the heavy sword, bouts of sore and numb pain spread from his arm to the rest of his body. Gritting his teeth to endure, Xiaoyan's heels gradually weakened. Finally, after one more chop, the fierce water current hit with a thud, knocking his body, which was already near its limit, off the wooden stake and into the pool. Splash! Emerging from the water, Xiaoyan spat out a mouthful of pool water, shook his head a few times, and then laboriously moved his nearly numb body toward the shore. After getting ashore, his entire body went soft and numb. He collapsed onto the cold rock surface. The painful soreness of his body made him not want to move even slightly. "Here, try to manage a bit." A fish, grilled until fragrant, was waved back and forth in front of Xiaoyan from behind. Opening his eyes and deeply inhaling the aroma, Xiaoyan's stomach immediately grumbled. Laboriously moving his body, he leaned against a large rock. Only then did he take the grilled fish and devour it. Looking at Xiaoyan's appearance, Old Man Yao smiled. His gaze swept over the more than 10 wooden stakes beneath the waterfall, and he said, "Not bad. It's only been 5 days. And you can already persevere on the 3rd wooden stake for such a long time." With his mouth full of food, Xiaoyan could only mutter a few vague sounds. Lately, the frequency of mercenaries appearing in this area has been increasing. Sitting next to Xiaoyan, Old Man Yao said as if casually. Slightly startled, Xiaoyan's eyes slowly narrowed. He forcefully swallowed all the food in his mouth and said with a cold laugh, "It seems the wolf-head mercenary group has noticed something. Based on their speed, they'll discover the location of this valley in at most 1 more month. It looks like we'll have to speed up the process a little more." Stroking his chin, Old Man Yao said with a calm smile. "Even faster." Hearing this, Xiaoyan widened his eyes in doubt. His current cultivation speed was already very fast. Did he still want to increase it further? Exactly, we can still increase it, but using this method will entail no small amount of suffering. Old Man Yao said frankly. Have I not suffered too little during this time? Rolling his eyes, Xiaoyan pouted and said. Ah yes, indeed. Smiling faintly and nodding, Old Man Yao took out Xiaoyan's storage ring, and then slowly retrieved more than 10 transparent jade bottles from inside. The bottles contained a kind of red liquid that looked like thick, fresh blood. What is this? Xiao Yan asked, looking curiously at the unfamiliar item. Burning blood. Old Man Yao took a jade bottle, gently shook it, and said, I made this by combining 23 different fire-attributed medicinal herbs with the fresh blood of 3 second-tier magical beasts. If categorized by rank, this is considered a 4th-rank medicinal pill. 4th rank. Xiao Yan's eyebrows slightly furrowed. This was the first time he had seen a medicinal pill of this rank. Source: https://truyenful.vn. What effect does this thing have? This burning blood is highly effective for cultivators of fire-attributed Dou Qi, but for cultivators of water-attributed Dou Qi, it's a poison. Applying it to your body can cause the Dou Qi inside to be constantly depleted while simultaneously being constantly regenerated. This constant tug-of-war between Dou Qi depletion and regeneration will steadily enhance your strength. Old Man Yao smiled, a hint of slyness in his eyes. However, don't be too happy too soon. As I said, if you want to use it to accelerate your cultivation speed, you'll have to suffer greatly. What kind of suffering? Looking at Old Man Yao's gaze, Xiao Yan felt a little uneasy in his heart and cautiously asked again. Give me your hand. Old Man Yao smiled and pulled out Xiao Yan's arm. Then, he tilted the jade bottle slightly. And a drop of red liquid fell onto his arm. Hiss! The moment the red liquid touched his hand, Xiao Yan was startled at first. Immediately after, he had to forcefully suck in a cold breath. Cold sweat instantly poured down his forehead continuously, his teeth were tightly clenched, and his arm incessantly trembled. In Xiao Yan's perception, the spot on his arm where the red liquid fell was like a perpetually radiating scorching fire. The burning sensation was like placing his arm on a pile of blazing charcoal. As if he had anticipated Xiao Yan's reaction, Old Man Yao smiled calmly. He once again took out a jade plate crafted from white jade from his storage ring, and then slowly rubbed the drop of liquid evenly, causing the area covered by the liquid to gradually expand significantly. As the area covered by the liquid continued to expand, Xiao Yan's arm trembled even more. The blue veins on his arm pulsed, looking somewhat horrific. The red liquid clinging to Xiao Yan's skin continuously emitted a faint warm current, and Xiao Yan's arm also became increasingly flushed red. This state of tug-of-war lasted for more than 10 minutes before slowly subsiding. Only when the burning sensation on his arm completely disappeared did Xiao Yan heavily sigh with relief. He wiped a torrent of sweat from his forehead, and looked once again at the small jade bottle in front of him, clearly showing a few more parts of apprehension in his eyes. This thing is too terrifying. His heart still full of fear, he patted his arm, which had just returned to normal temperature. Xiao Yan stared intently at Old Man Yao and said with a distressed expression, You're not actually going to use this for my cultivation, are you? Carefully sense it for a moment. How has the Dou Qi circulation in your arm changed? Not answering his question, Old Man Yao said with a smile. Shrugging his shoulders, Xiao Yan had no choice but to obey and close his eyes. His mind quickly shifted to the meridians in his arm. After sensing it for a moment, he was suddenly surprised to find that the Dou Qi in the meridians of his arm was not only much more vigorous than the Dou Qi flowing in other meridians, but the energy contained within the Dou Qi here also seemed to be slightly stronger than in other places. With a trace of astonishment, Xiao Yan slowly opened his eyes, looked at Old Man Yao who was chuckling softly beside him. After a moment of silence, he fiercely said, Bring it on, I'll risk my life. Seeing Xiao Yan grit his teeth and nod, the smile on Old Man Yao's face deepened. He had long guessed that this person would not be able to resist the allure of the rapidly increasing strength that burning blood offered. Lie down. From now on, you'll coat your entire body with it once a day. Your cultivation speed will surely increase by 30 to 40%. Waving his hand, Old Man Yao said with a smile. His mouth slightly agape, Xiaoyan stuffed his clothes into his mouth, then clenched his hands tightly onto a large rock nearby. A muffled sound came from his mouth, "Bring it on." Seeing Xiaoyan's appearance as if facing a formidable enemy, old Man Yao shook his head helplessly. He slightly tilted the jade bottle, and a stream of liquid slowly poured out. "Ah!" A miserable wail instantly echoed throughout the valley. While Xiaoyan devoted all his time to cultivation, the search parties from the wolf-head mercenary group also grew more numerous. After losing the lives of over 10 of their comrades, they finally began to gradually approach Xiaoyan's small valley. A month later, at the time when Xiaoyan could persevere standing on the 8th wooden stake for a long time, a mercenary from the wolf-head mercenary group finally stumbled into the quiet area of the small valley. Standing at the entrance of the valley, the mercenary from the wolf-head mercenary group stared blankly at the young man cultivating beneath the large waterfall. A moment later, a cold gust of wind helped his mind clear. Immediately, a look of wild joy appeared in his heart. Without saying a word, he took out a flare from his person. Just as he was about to launch it, a sharp energy force suddenly shot toward him from the front. The energy force's power made this mercenary, who was around the level of a 6-star Dou practitioner, shiver. His foot stamped the ground, and his figure quickly retreated backward. Bang! A black shadow flew through the air, heavily plunging into the mud in front of him, causing mud to splash everywhere. A black heavy sword with an unusually large hilt was deeply embedded in the ground. Gazing at the slightly strange black heavy sword, the wolf-head mercenary group members' eyes narrowed slightly. This unique weapon had almost become the symbol of the young man with the bounty on his head. In a situation where the scattered mud obscured his vision, the mercenary's seasoned experience proved not to be lacking. His figure continuously retreated rapidly, and his sharp eyes constantly scanned the surroundings. Just as the mercenary was about to leave the valley entrance, a sudden tension arose in his heart, and his body abruptly fell without any warning. Crack! The moment his body fell, a fierce energy force unexpectedly slashed down from above his head, finally striking the trunk of a large tree. Instantly, a fissure spread across the tree trunk, and with a cracking sound, the large tree snapped in half. Looking at the tree trunk in front of him that was forcefully severed by the energy force, the mercenary lying on the ground sucked in a cold breath. How much power would it take to create such destructive force? The shock in his heart suddenly vanished. The mercenary abruptly slammed his hand onto the ground. His body was like a lizard clinging to a wall. His foot also stomped forcefully, and his figure quickly moved in a strange manner toward the forest. The mercenary was extremely pleased with his ability to flee. This was the yellow rank high-class gecko crawl do technique, which had helped him find a way out of deadly situations many times. He believed that among Do practitioners, very few could stop him in the forest when he used this Do technique. The mercenary was imagining receiving a generous reward after reporting this news, and then embracing the fair-skinned, plump woman who usually paid him no mind, when suddenly, a pair of feet appeared in front of him along his path of movement. His rapidly moving body suddenly stopped. The mercenary fearfully raised his head and saw a handsome face revealing a slight smile. "Running pretty fast, aren't you?" The young man smiled toward the mercenary, but icy killing intent emerged in his pitch-black eyes, making the mercenary shiver all over. Watching the stunned mercenary, Xiaoyan's lips suddenly curved up. The black sword in his hand abruptly chopped down furiously, and instantly, a miserable scream echoed in the forest. Indifferently looking at the small bloodstain on the heavy Xian ruler, Xiaoyan glanced at the corpse at his feet, softly licked his lips, and quietly said, "You want to kill me like this? Fine, starting today, I will relentlessly hunt down and exterminate every single member of the wolf-head mercenary group who enters the magical beast mountain range. If you want to be vicious, I will be even more vicious. Revenge begins now." The thick forest was quietly dense, occasionally a few small animals darted out from within, startling the flocks of birds resting on the branches. The tranquil atmosphere didn't last long, however, and was soon shattered by a figure moving frantically, instantly causing the birds and animals in the forest to scatter chaotically. Ignoring the disturbance he was causing to the peaceful scenery, the figure was somewhat frantic, dodging and hiding, his frightened expression occasionally sweeping back to the dark forest behind him. His fearful demeanor suggested that some primordial fierce beast was chasing him from behind. After running for a while longer, the figure, dressed like a mercenary, looked up at a light not far away, and a look of wild joy appeared on his face. As long as he got out of this damned forest, he could call his comrades for rescue. And then he wouldn't have to fear the grim reaper behind him taking his life anymore. The mercenary's body suddenly shot forward. He leaped slightly, and his foot fiercely stomped on a branch. Instantly, his speed abruptly increased, and he darted toward the light. Seeing the light so close, the mercenary's face showed even more wild joy. However, at that very moment, the look of wild joy suddenly froze. The mercenary discovered that a surge of powerful suction force had abruptly appeared, not only forcefully stopping his body from shooting forward, but also pulling his body backward. A look of terror instantly appeared on his face. Before the mercenary could even cry out, a black shadow suddenly shot past him from behind. The fierce, wind-tearing force, like a rumble of thunder, heavily struck his chest. Thud. The heavy sound made the mercenary's pupils quickly contract. A sudden indentation appeared in his chest. The immense force heavily slammed the mercenary's body, which was suspended in midair, onto the ground. Sand and dust flew everywhere, and blood mixed with shattered internal organs wildly spurted out. His eyes wide open, staring at the figure standing upright on a branch in the air above his head, the mercenary's gaze gradually turned white. After a moment, his breathing stopped. Looking indifferently at the mercenary whose breathing had ceased, the young man standing on the branch with a large black ruler strapped to his back slightly clenched his hand and muttered softly, "The 11th person. If you're prepared to take someone else's head for money, then be prepared for your own head to be chopped off first." The young man on the small branch was none other than Xianxia, who had just left the training area. In just over 2 days since Xianxia left the small valley, he had encountered 13 people from the Wolf Head mercenary group searching for him. Xianxia had no intention of showing mercy to those who intended to take his head for a reward. Along the way, any member of the Wolf Head mercenary group with a strength below 8-star Do practitioner was almost entirely killed by him. With Xiaoyan's current strength, if he put down the heavy Xian ruler, even a 7-star Do practitioner could be killed by him within 20 exchanges. Of course, the primary condition was that these 7-star Do practitioners did not possess a Do technique of the same rank as his. However, it was likely that the entire Wolf Head mercenary group couldn't even find one such person. The day before, Xiaoyan had obtained some information about the Wolf Head mercenary group from the mouth of a mercenary. According to that mercenary, the strongest person in the Wolf Head mercenary group now was the leader, 2-star Do master Mushi. Below him, there was a 9-star Do practitioner, and an 8-star Do practitioner among the high-ranking figures of the Wolf Head group. Excluding these 3 people, no one else in the entire Wolf Head mercenary group could contend with Xiaoyan. His eyes gently glanced at the lifeless corpse once more. Xiaoyan's toe lightly tapped the branch. Borrowing the force, his body shot out of the dense forest. He let out a soft, cold laugh and slowly disappeared. "Young Master Muli, I ask you, how many people has the Wolf Head mercenary group lost now? You send 1 person, I kill 1 person. Now the game is just beginning. Bastard, die." Inside the vast great hall, Mushi, upon receiving the constant news updates from his subordinates, furiously crushed the teacup in his hand, roaring angrily. Watching the furious Mushi, the high-ranking members of the Wolf Head group in the great hall were completely silent. No one wanted to provoke him at this moment and risk misfortune. In just 2 short days, we've lost over 15 core members. If this continues, will there be anyone left in our wolf head mercenary group? Breathing heavily, Mushi said grimly. Everyone looked at each other, speechless, unable to answer. The person who struck is none other than Xiaoyan, it's been confirmed. Looking at the silent great hall, Muli coughed lightly and had no choice but to push on. Didn't you say his strength was at most equal to yours? Then why did the 3 7-star Dou practitioners you sent out still end up dead at his hands? Slamming his hand heavily on the table, Mushi roared furiously. Smiling bitterly, Muli said helplessly, 3 months ago. The hidden strength that guy displayed was indeed only comparable to mine. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been pressured into such a pathetic state by my men in the cave. But the strength he is displaying now is absolutely no less than a 7-star Dou practitioner, perhaps even an 8-star. Mushi's expression was grim. As if suddenly recalling something, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch, and a hint of coldness arose in his voice. Could it be that the guy cultivated in the magical beast mountain range for just a few months, and has already grown to this extent? Hearing that, the corner of Muli's eye twitched. A hint of fear flashed in his eyes. In merely 2 months, that guy's strength could increase by 2 stars. This damned bastard. How exactly did he cultivate this speed? Isn't it too terrifying? It seems my previous guess was indeed correct. That young brat is truly not an ordinary person. Slowly recovering from his anger, Mushi sat back down in his chair. Tapping his finger on the table, he pondered for a moment, then said grimly, "First, have my men temporarily withdraw from the magical beast mountain range. Wait 2 days, then reorganize the teams into groups of 5, equipped with flares, and then enter the magical beast mountain range together. I will set a net inescapable by heaven or earth. Let's see where this young brat can hide." Clenching his hand, Mushi's ferocious face was filled with killing intent. "Yes. All right, where is Hammon? Why haven't I seen him?" Nodding slightly, Mushi's eyes swept across the great hall, and he suddenly frowned and asked. "Ah." Hearing that, everyone below was startled. After a moment, one person said with a chuckle, "I heard that the 3rd leader, Hammon, led a few brothers to enter the magical beast mountain range to search for a snow-claws fox as a gift for Lady Lawn of the Blue Flower wine shop." The corner of Mushi's mouth twitched and he cursed angrily, "This idiot only thinks about women. Doesn't he know what the wolf head mercenary group is facing lately? Yet he still dares to enter the magical beast mountain range alone. That damned man will die on a woman's belly sooner or later. Leader, the 3rd leader is an 8-star Dou practitioner. If he encounters Xiaoyan, he might even be able to conveniently take care of him. With that guy's brain, I'll be happy if he just returns alive." Mushi snorted coldly, then suddenly waved his hand with agitation. He didn't know why, but a feeling of unease lingered in his heart. Hammon was unlike the other members. If he also unfortunately died at Xiaoyan's hands, it would be a significant blow to the wolf head mercenary group. "Tell that guy to report to me immediately upon his return." Leaving behind an angry instruction, Mushi turned and left the murmuring great hall. Source: https://truyenful.vn. Under the faint moonlight, Xiaoyan leaned against a branch, gently biting on a patch of emerald green grass in his mouth. A faint, unpleasant taste filled his mouth. Standing on the treetop, using the dense foliage for cover, Xiaoyan could clearly see the camp below. There were a total of 15 mercenaries in the camp, the strongest of whom was a 5-star Dou practitioner. In the center tent there was an 8-star Dou practitioner, who was Xiaoyan's target this time, reportedly the 3rd leader of the wolf head mercenary group. With Xiaoyan's current strength, fighting an 8-star Dou Practitioner alone, the chances of winning were quite high, but this was on the primary condition that the opponent had no help. Looking at the current situation, if he wanted to smoothly kill that 8-star Do practitioner, he absolutely had to eliminate all the surrounding mercenaries first. Frowning at the somewhat careful defense of the camp below, Xiaoyan did not immediately act, but quietly waited for the best opportunity. In the sky, the full moon gradually ascended higher, and the ground was completely silent. After waiting for a long time, a gentle breeze suddenly blew across the land. The gentle wind rustled through the forest, creating whooshing sounds. Sensing the direction of this gentle breeze, a subtle smile appeared on Xiaoyan's face. His finger gently rubbed his storage ring, and a pouch of medicinal powder appeared in his hand. This pouch of medicinal powder was a gift from little fairy doctor on the day they parted. This type had the special effect of putting others to sleep, which was exactly what Xiaoyan needed right now. Clutching the medicinal powder in his hand, Xiaoyan smiled. Just as he was about to act, he suddenly noticed two mercenaries guarding the center of the camp walking toward him. Was I discovered? Frowning, Xiaoyan's figure retracted like a phantom. He then coldly watched the two approaching guards. The Do Qi in his body also began to slowly circulate. But when the two mercenaries reached the base of the tree where Xiaoyan was hiding, they suddenly stopped. The two men looked around and then began to urinate on the tree trunk. Watching the two men's actions, Xiaoyan sighed in relief, inwardly cursing under his breath. Damn it, that woman is too plump. Just looking at her but makes me want to quickly pin her down and get to business. While urinating, one mercenary suddenly spoke, uttering crude words. Keep your voice down. That woman is the third leader's exclusive property. If you dare to do such a thing to her, the third leader will directly tear you to pieces and feed you to the wolves. The other mercenary cautiously reminded him. Humph, she's just a tramp. Last time, I even saw the second leader on top of her. But she wouldn't dare tell the third leader about it, haha. Forget it, forget it. Don't talk nonsense about this anymore. Or else it'll be a small fry who suffer. Let's go. Done with his business, the mercenary on the left turned around first. A black shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. Before he could react, he felt a sharp pain in his throat, and then his consciousness gradually blurred. Let's go. The remaining mercenary, after urinating, just turned around. Seeing the emptiness behind him, he was startled. Before he could utter a word, he felt a cold chill on his throat, and then his vision faded to black. Silently carrying the bodies of the two mercenaries into the deep forest, Xiaoyan climbed back up to the top of the large tree. Looking at the camp below, he began to sprinkle the medicinal powder in his hand. The medicinal powder, shielded by the darkness, gently drifted with the wind, quietly falling into the camp. Under the effect of the medicinal powder, the mercenaries around the camp instantly went limp and collapsed one after another. In just a moment, the entire camp became completely silent. Looking at the quiet camp, Xiaoyan waited a little longer before jumping down from the branch. He drew a long sword from the body of a mercenary and slowly advanced into the camp area. Carrying the long sword, Xiaoyan smoothly entered the central tent. Inside the tent were two naked bodies tightly entwined, vigorously shaking. Xiaoyan heard the man's heavy panting, and the woman's moans coming from inside the tent. A trace of a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Looking down at the fair-skinned mature woman beneath him, Hammond's face was slightly flushed with lust. His large hand forcefully grasped the two soft, round mounds and squeezed slightly. The woman beneath him instantly arched her small waist like a she-cat, letting out lewd moans. Hearing the stimulating, soft moans, Hammond's entire body trembled. He tightly wrapped his arms around the woman's waist, his body wildly shaking. A moment later, the two naked bodies stiffened simultaneously. Raising his head, the intense pleasure made Hammond let out a sigh of relief, tightly embracing the soft body beneath him. Just as Hammond's body was slightly trembling from pleasure, the sensitive nerves he had developed from years of living on the edge suddenly made the skin on his entire body tense up. A flash of vigilance, quick as lightning, streaked through his heart. His hand immediately grabbed the blanket beside him, and threw it toward the back. Hiss! A cold glint flashed, easily splitting the blanket into two pieces. A figure quickly entered the tent. The cold sword edge mercilessly slashed toward Hammond's neck. The sudden attack made Hammond's face drastically change. His body, on the bed, moved awkwardly, narrowly avoiding the sword edge. The first strike failed. The sword edge did not pause and immediately swept horizontally. A cold light flashed past the flame in the tent and chased Hammond, drawing a pale trail of blood on his chest. Ah! Seeing the black shadow suddenly rush in, the woman on the bed, ignoring her exposed charms, fearfully stood up and screamed. Xiaoyan, his hand cupped, drew a piece of charcoal into his hand, and shot it backward without looking. With a small sound, the piercing scream was silenced. Who are you? Why are you trying to assassinate me? Don't you know I'm the third leader of the Wolf-Head mercenary group? Hammond shouted furiously while retreating rapidly, his face drastically changed. That's exactly why I'm killing you. The black shadow raised his head, revealing the young man's handsome face. You? Xiaoyan. Looking at the very young man in front of him, Hammond was stunned. Immediately after, his gaze shifted to the massive black ruler on the young man's back, his pupils suddenly constricted, and he shouted coldly. It's truly an honor to be remembered by the third leader. Smiling, Xiaoyan's palm clenched and then forcefully struck the hilt of the sword. Instantly, the long sword transformed into a streak of cold light, shooting toward Hammond like lightning. The sword light's speed was extremely fast. Even though Hammond's reaction was not slow, Xiaoyan still left a streak of blood on his face. Licking the blood flowing down his face with his tongue, Hammond's eyes were filled with dense killing intent. He smiled grimly and said, You actually have some guts, daring to assassinate me alone. But it's good to deal with you here, saving me the trouble of searching later. As he spoke, Hammond slowly turned his head. A faint, half-hidden douqi appeared on his body. He clenched his iron fists, and the sound of joints cracking rang out. Seeing Hammond enter the battle state, Xiaoyan shrugged helplessly. This person's sense of danger was far beyond his expectation, so the surprise attack plan had failed. However, the sneak attack was only a way for Xiaoyan to save some energy. If he could have ended the fight with minimal effort, he wouldn't have needed to expend so much effort. Furthermore, after a few months of rigorous cultivation, Xiaoyan also wanted to see how much he had improved through actual combat. His body rotated slightly, and the crisp sound of joints cracking rang out. Just like Hammond, his hands slowly opened and then tightly clenched, pale yellow douqi appearing on his fists. Brat, making me your prey was the most foolish decision you could make. A bloodthirsty smile appeared at the corner of Hammond's mouth. His foot slammed the ground, and he rushed toward Xiaoyan like a fierce, colossal magical beast. Coldly watching Hammond attack with fierce force, Xiaoyan slowly extended his palm. In an instant, it suddenly opened, and he shouted softly, Go. As soon as Xiaoyan's shout finished, a fierce force suddenly erupted from his palm, heavily striking Hammond's body. Thud. A dull sound. Hammond's face stiffened slightly. His body, which was rushing forward, suddenly shot backward. His feet firmly dug into the ground, creating a deep furrow that extended several meters backward before he slowly stopped. Story source, full story. The brat truly has some tricks. His face paused for a moment. Hammond slowly exhaled, pounding his chest with his fist. The bronze-colored skin on his chest visibly turned pale. The rock technique I cultivate is of the strong defensive attribute. With your strength, you still can't break through my defense, Hammond said with a cold laugh. He clenched his fist, and a pale green color appeared on his arm. His foot stomped the ground again. Hammond's speed this time was noticeably faster than before. The wild speed generated a wind pressure that made the tent billow. With a calm expression, Xiaoyan sensed the approaching fierce wind. His body subtly tilted, and an extremely powerful force erupted from his fist. His toe lightly scratched the ground, and Xiaoyan appeared behind Hammond like a phantom. His fist, carrying concentrated dou qi, heavily struck Hammond's neck. Clang! The fist hitting Hammond's body unexpectedly produced a crisp sound, like striking rock. Frowning, Xiaoyan retracted his fist like lightning. Borrowing his own speed, he immediately used successive punches, kicks, and elbows, concentrating all his attacks on a single point. Instantly, the tent continuously echoed with the sound of knocking on rock. Get lost, you annoying fly. I told you, with your strength, you can't break through my rock defense. Hammond laughed coldly with satisfaction, his right leg sweeping backward with fierce force. Xiaoyan's arms, crossed in front of his chest, directly met Hammond's powerful kick. Instantly, Xiaoyan's body was sent flying backward. He's worthy of being called one of the dou qi best suited for close combat. This strength is truly powerful. His body flipped in midair before landing steadily. Xiaoyan shook his slightly numb hand, sighing in awe in his heart. Brat! With that little bit of strength, you still dream of confronting the wolf-head mercenary group. You're truly courting death. Hammond rubbed the dust off his back and said with a grin. No time to play around with you. I'll finish you quickly, so I don't disrupt my good time. Hammond slowly opened his hands in front of his chest. His 2 feet spread wide. The hair on the top of his head stood up. A faint white dou qi flashed in his pupils. Hammond exhaled a puff of white air, and Xiaoyan immediately noticed that Hammond's reinforced limbs suddenly became much stronger. White muscle tissue constantly bulged on his bare arms, and a powerful force rapidly condensed. It ends now, brat. Feeling the force in his body increase instantly, reaching its peak state, Hammond took a step and his speed suddenly exploded, becoming comparable to Xiaoyan's speed. Looking ahead, a ferocious smile flashed on Hammond's face. His massive fist, accompanied by the sound of tearing wind, furiously slammed toward Xiaoyan's head. The fierce force coming down from above his head made Xiaoyan's expression slightly change. The force in his palm suddenly shot out. Borrowing this force to generate a backward thrust, Xiaoyan's body rapidly retreated. Trying to run. Seeing Xiaoyan rapidly retreating, Hammond laughed coldly. His foot slightly pushed off the ground and his body arched like a lurking leopard. In an instant, he appeared in front of Xiaoyan again. Die! Grinning, Hammond's fist once again wildly smashed down toward Xiaoyan's head. Seeing that he couldn't evade, Xiaoyan frowned. The dou qi in his body circulated quickly, and then his 2 fists fiercely met the attack head-on. Thud! A heavy explosion echoed in the tent. The 2 men clashed on the ground. The immense shockwave generated by the colossal physical force lifted a layer of dust from the earth. Dare to clash with me head-on? Get out! Seeing Xiaoyan dare to choose a head-on confrontation, a cruel look flashed in Hammond's eyes. The dou qi in his body surged through his meridians and then burst out. Humph! The immense force made Xiaoyan's face slightly pale. A low groan came from his throat. His footsteps staggered as he rapidly retreated, only slowly stopping when he reached the tent wall. I didn't think you could actually clash with me head on. It seems you've also been cultivating your body frequently. Seeing that Xiaoyan only seemed to have sustained minor injuries, Hammond couldn't help but say with some surprise. One must know that cultivating the body was extremely arduous, not comparable to cultivating dou qi. Looking at Xiao Yan's slender appearance, it was hard for him to imagine that this person could also cultivate his body. It seems you're quite difficult to deal with. Confronting an 8-star dou practitioner is still quite arduous. Rubbing his slightly uncomfortable chest, Xiao Yan said softly with a sigh. Hearing Xiao Yan lowering his head and muttering to himself, Hammond couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, then chuckled coldly. Sighing and shaking his head, Xiao Yan looked at Hammond in front of him. He slowly took off the heavy Xian ruler and casually tossed it aside. Thud. The heavy Xian ruler landed, coincidentally crushing a hard rock into powder. Under its terrifying weight, staring blankly at the powder, Hammond's pupils suddenly constricted like a needle. A sense of shock slowly rose in his heart. This guy actually fought him while wearing such a heavy object. Sucking in a cold breath, Hammond looked at the young man again, his eyes filled with a mixture of solemnity and fear. Ignoring the change in his opponent's gaze, Xiao Yan gently relaxed his body. The dou qi in his body instantly erupted, making him feel completely filled with power. My apologies. I just used you as a testing subject for a moment. Raising his head, a hint of apology flashed on the young man's handsome face. He smiled slightly toward Hammond, and then his figure suddenly vanished. His figure flashed in front of Hammond. Before Hammond could even react, the young man's voice rang in his ear. It's over, third leader of the Wolf Head Mercenary Group. Thank you for listening to the story on KTN Storyverse. Please like, share, and subscribe to enjoy more amazing stories. Following a soft sound, a surge of fierce energy suddenly appeared at Hammond's back. Feeling the powerful surge of energy, Hammond's face changed. He lightly stomped his foot and roared. A white light filled his bare back. Octane blast. Shouting coldly in his heart, Xiao Yan's palm suddenly opened. His smooth sleeve was ripped apart by the fierce energy surge. His fist then retracted, quickly revealing itself. In an instant it carried a fierce force, releasing a sharp, wind-tearing force. Hearing the sharp, wind-tearing force behind him, Hammond's expression was startled. Could this lone guy actually temper his pure physical body to this extent? Clang! The crisp sound slowly echoed inside the tent, extremely jarring. You are reading the novel copied at truyenfull.vn. Xiao Yan's face was expressionless. His right fist heavily struck Hammond's back. A fierce surge of force from his foot directly slammed onto the ground, digging out a half-meter deep hole. Crack! A soft sound followed a fissure that spread out from Hammond's back. However, it was instantly suppressed by the surging dou qi in Hammond's body. I told you, with your strength, you can't break through my defense. Slowly turning his head, Hammond smiled coldly and said, That's not necessarily true. Smiling indifferently, Xiao Yan withdrew his palm, which was pressed against Hammond's back. The corner of his mouth subtly curved up, and he said softly, Explode. Thud. A heavy sound suddenly came from within Hammond's body. The face that was initially smiling quickly stiffened, replaced by extreme terror. Pfft. A mouthful of fresh blood mixed with crushed internal organs wildly sprayed out from Hammond's mouth, so barbaric. DG. The initially rigid body instantly went soft and convulsed as it collapsed. Looking at the body that quickly lost its vitality, Xiao Yan indifferently dusted his hands, then turned and left. In the early morning, rays of sunlight from the horizon penetrated through the branches, sparsely shining into the camp. Inside the quiet camp, some unconscious mercenaries groggily opened their eyes. They slowly sat up. After looking at each other for a long time, they finally fully awoke from their slumber. Startled, they gripped their weapons tightly and quickly made their way to the tent. Third leader. Standing outside the tent, a mercenary shouted loudly, but there was no response. After a moment of silence, all the mercenaries felt a sense of unease. One mercenary took a step forward. With an axe in one hand, he cut the tent fabric with the other. The fabric slowly fluttered down, and the scene inside finally appeared before everyone's eyes. Inside the tent, Hammond lay paralyzed. On the ground, his eyes wide open. A trace of horror lingered on his face. A pool of thick fresh blood on the ground continuously shook everyone's hearts to the extreme. Third leader was killed. Staring in shock at the tragedy in the tent, all the mercenaries' faces turned pale, and they softly slumped onto the ground. The Wolf Head Mercenary Group's third leader, Hammond, has been murdered. I heard the culprit was that young man they put a bounty on. According to internal news, that young man is called Xiaoyan. He's killed nearly 20 members of the Wolf Head Group. TSK. The Wolf Head Mercenary Group has completely lost face this time, being harassed to such a pathetic state by a young man not yet 20. Let's see if that Mushi still has the audacity to be arrogant in the future. Unbeknownst to where the rumors originated, in just a short time until noon, almost everyone in Xianxia town knew about the murder of the Wolf Head Mercenary Group's third leader by Xiaoyan. Instantly, countless mocking and eager eyes turned toward the Wolf Head Mercenary Group. In a quiet small room, the white-clothed woman, upon hearing the report from the maid outside, and who was carefully concocting medicinal powder, trembled slightly. The small bottle containing the concocting medicinal powder instantly failed. Gently shaking her head, the white-clothed woman carefully placed the small bottle down. Her bright eyes shifted, and a subtle smile appeared on her beautiful face. She whispered, "That Xiaoyan actually chose the path of revenge." Her jade hand rested on her white skirt. Little fairy doctor gracefully sat down on the chair. She then took out a 7-colored book from her innerwear, gently stroked it for a moment, and subtly curved her lips. To be able to kill Hammond means that Xiaoyan's strength must now be at least 8-star Do practitioner. That cultivation speed is truly terrifying. It's only been a few months since we last met, and yet Mr. Yao wishes to see you. The maid's gentle voice suddenly came from outside the door. Hearing the call, little fairy doctor's delicately drawn eyebrows furrowed. This Mr. Yao was the manager of the 10,000 Medicine House. Since the news about the Wolf Head Mercenary Group had spread a few days ago, his reason for coming to see her now was obvious. Let him in. Putting the 7-colored book back into her innerwear, little fairy doctor sighed helplessly. No matter what, she was currently dependent on them, so she could not refuse to give this manager face. "Ah, Miss Little Fairy Doctor, are you well recently?" Not long after the maid relayed the message, a distinguished gentleman in a long robe walked into the room with a cheerful smile, and addressed Little Fairy Doctor with a laugh. Raising her beautiful eyes to look at the middle-aged man in front of her, Little Fairy Doctor slightly nodded. She stood up, turned, and gracefully poured 2 cups of tea at the table. Sitting on the chair, Mr. Yao watched Little Fairy Doctor's bending posture with its exquisite curves. His eyes finally fixed on her slender, graceful figure, and an inexplicable light flashed in his pupils. By the time Little Fairy Doctor turned around, Mr. Yao had already retracted his rather impolite gaze. Carrying a cup of tea, she gently placed her hand on the table. Little Fairy Doctor's rosy lips slightly parted, and she said softly, "Mr. Yao is here, I presume, on business." "Ah." Chuckling, Mr. Yao's 2 hands, holding the teacup, seemed to still retain the warmth of the beauty's hand. He furtively rubbed the teacup, took a sip and smiled, saying, "I assume you've heard the news about that Xiaoyan." Little Fairy Doctor's face was calm. Her expression did not change due to this. "When you entered the cave to seek treasure, was he with you then?" His eyes subtly flickered, and Mr. Yao suddenly asked with a smile. "Mr. Yao, I think you might be mistaken." Shaking her head, little fairy doctor said with a calm smile. I was indeed with Xiaoyan, but it was because I nearly slipped and fell down the cliff while collecting herbs, and he merely helped me out. Regarding the treasure hunt in the cave, I apologize, we truly did not see any treasure. However, I did hear that when escorting us back, the wolf-head mercenary group suddenly left the team, seeming to be searching for something. If Mr. Yao is interested in the treasure, you can call the leaders of the two major mercenary groups to go with you, and see what the wolf-head mercenary group is transporting. Little fairy doctor said with a smile. Hearing that, Mr. Yao's expression subtly changed. He immediately chuckled and said, I was just casually asking, Since you know Xiaoyan, if you encounter him again someday, perhaps you could tell him to visit our 10,000 medicine house. Although the wolf-head mercenary group is a powerful force, we at the 10,000 medicine house are not afraid of them. If there is a chance, I will relay the message, but he and I were merely chance acquaintances, Ping Shui Xiangfeng, so Mr. Yao should not have too much expectation. Little fairy doctor said casually. All right, then I won't disturb you any more. I'll be going out to discuss matters. Smiling and nodding, Mr. Yao chatted with little fairy doctor for a few more sentences, and then stood up to take his leave. Watching the room door slowly close behind him, little fairy doctor indifferently glanced at the teacup from which he had drunk. She murmured softly, it seems he has not abandoned his intentions. Alas, I hope you don't do anything that disappoints me. Although my strength is not great, but I personally brewed the tea. Can you truly drink it carelessly? Her jade hand lightly touched the pale green tea water. In her mind, the image of the black-clothed young man reappeared. Little fairy doctor's thin lips subtly curved. You are the man who experienced hardship with me. Don't lose to this small Qingshan town. The air was grim. A corpse lay in the great hall. Judging by the face, it was indeed Hammon, the third leader, who had died at Xiaoyan's hands. Looking at Hammon's corpse, everyone in the great hall remained silent, not daring to make any sound, because they sensed the chilling killing intent emanating from the men seated at the highest position in the great hall. I want to mince that little bastard's body into 10,000 pieces. His red eyes stared intensely at Hammon's corpse. His teeth gnashed loudly, creating a cold, suppressing sound of frenzy. Looking at the icy corpse beside him, Muli narrowed his eyes. A look of unspeakable shock and fear flashed in his pupils. That person, whom he chased and forced to flee up the mountain just a month ago, had unexpectedly grown to this extent now. As one of the three powerhouses of the mercenary group, Muli knew Hammon's strength very well. Even he had to be wary of him. He was indeed a powerhouse, yet he was unexpectedly eliminated by a young man not yet 20. This incident, which was somewhat vague but true, caused a wave of fear to rise in his heart, and further intensified his frenzied hostility toward the young man. This kind of enemy must be pushed to his death by every means possible. Slowly raising his head and glancing at the person sitting above, the two father and son, with similar temperaments, both had surging killing intent in their eyes. Xiaoyan being able to kill Hammon indicates that his strength must be at the 8-star level. Furthermore, Hammon possessed a high-grade Huang-rank rock-attributed Do Chi technique, and he was proficient in 2 high-grade Huang-rank Do techniques. Even within the same rank, he could be considered almost undefeated. Yet, he was still killed by Xiaoyan. It seems that Guy must possess a Do Chi technique and Do techniques that are even higher ranked than Hammon's. Mushi's voice revealed a faint, cold hostility. Starting tomorrow, all members with strength of 5-star Do practitioner and above must remove their wolf head badges, then disguise themselves as lone mercenaries. They will enter the magical beast mountain range in groups of 5. If anyone discovers Xiaoyan's whereabouts, use a flare to communicate. Mushi ordered with a malicious face. Yes. Everyone below shouted in confirmation. I don't believe that little bastard can escape my grasp. Clenching his hand. Slowly, Mushi smiled coldly and said, Little scum, your life ends here. The clear, cold moonlight slowly emerged from the horizon, covering the entire forest in a faint layer. Hiss. At a certain mountain peak, the young man tightly bit his clothes in his mouth. Cold sweat poured down his forehead. The veins on his hands tightly gripped the branches. His bare back was covered in a large patch of red liquid. The old man's somewhat ethereal body was gently rubbing the liquid in. And with every movement of the old man's hand, the young man's body fiercely convulsed. Only when the red liquid completely covered the young man's back did the old man stop. He looked down at the young man's convulsing, pained face, and said with a somewhat gleeful smile, Feeling good? Feeling good, my ass. The scorching pain emanating from his back made Xiaoyan curse loudly. He truly feared this devilish burning sensation. Heh heh. Chuckling. Old Man Yao looked down at the red liquid that was slowly evaporating. He then nodded and asked casually, How is it? Do you feel like you've touched the gate of 7-star Do practitioner? Hearing that, Xiaoyan immediately rolled his eyes and pouted helplessly. I just broke through to 6-star Do practitioner. Do you think it's possible for me to break through and touch the gate of 7-star Do practitioner in the next month? There are 3 stars in each stage, but the most difficult is the breakthrough. It's been nearly 5 months since we embarked on this journey. And the time limit you have with that girl from the Cloud Mist sect is now less than a year. Old Man Yao said with a calm smile. Slightly stunned, Xiaoyan licked his lips and frowned. I don't know what rank she's at now. 2 years ago, she was already a 3-star Do practitioner. Given her talent and the resources of the Cloud Mist sect, I don't think she's any weaker than I am. That's right. Although I have many ways to instantly boost your strength, it would leave you with serious lasting side effects. Using those secret techniques, I fear you would forever stop progressing afterward. Old Man Yao said slowly, glancing at the silent Xiaoyan, even if you could truly defeat that girl with this secret technique, I would not let you use it. The loss is too great. I don't think I'll be defeated by her in our 3-year agreement. You know how much effort I've put in these 2 years, she's just one of the important factors that make me persevere in rigorous cultivation. Xiaoyan leaped up, looked up at the moonlight, spread his hands, and said indifferently with narrowed eyes. Slowly exhaling, Xiaoyan turned back to look at Old Man Yao's somewhat ethereal body. He pouted and said, Besides, you never said you couldn't help me catch up to her. You little brat. Looking at Xiaoyan's mockery, Old Man Yao shook his head. Helplessly. He lightly waved his hand, and a pale, cold flame appeared in his palm. Staring intently at the gently flickering flame, a hint of a smile appeared on his aged face, and he said calmly, Don't worry. If I didn't even have that capability, how could I still have the audacity to show off in front of you? Although I can help your strength rapidly increase, the prerequisite for my cultivation method is time, and you are currently being chased all over the mountain. That's wasting your precious, limited time. Old Man Yao teased. Xiaoyan rolled his eyes, spread his hands helplessly and said, Actually, Master could just fart and kill them all. But you prefer to pretend to be a superior expert who refuses to act. Bam! Slapping Xiaoyan's head, Old Man Yao scolded. With a laugh, if I solve everything for you, then what's the point of your life? If you don't fight against others, how will your mind and experience grow? Shrugging, Xiaoyan turned back. He groaned in anguish, muttering curses, Those bastards, I'll kill them all sooner or sooner. They're wasting too much time, ah. Ah. Stretching his neck and howling for a moment. Xiaoyan suddenly bit his clothes in his mouth again, saying vaguely, Master, continue. Eh? Hearing that, Old Man Yao was startled, You can still persevere. Sigh, I don't have that much time to rest, ah. The young man buried his face in his clothes, sighing mournfully. Looking at the young man, whose whole body was tense and whose resolve was undeniable, old Manya was stunned. For a moment, a look of joy then appeared on his face. Smiling and nodding, he took out a bottle of burning blood from his storage ring, and then tilted it down. Source: https://trueinfo. VN. Hiss. In the quiet night, the cold air emanating from the young man's clenched teeth slowly lingered without dissipating. The hot sunlight, penetrating through the branches, left countless small mottled spots in the dense forest, looking truly beautiful. Hiding in a secret spot in the forest, Xiaoyan frowned tightly, watching the mercenaries advancing into the magical Beast Mountain range not far below. Although mercenaries often went in, today Xiaoyan vaguely sensed that something was wrong. Peering through the bush, Xiaoyan intensely stared at the mercenaries. After a long while, his pupils quickly contracted. He finally understood what was wrong with this place. The team walking below, at first glance, seemed to be a temporary one, but as they moved, they vaguely revealed a kind of tacit understanding that could only be developed through long-term coordination. It really seems like something's not right. Frowning tightly, Xiaoyan spat out the grass in his mouth. He wriggled his body, cautiously crawled out of the bush, and quickly ran into the forest. Xiaoyan's clothes were covered in a green sap, like Special Forces soldiers, DG. This liquid made him extremely safe and undetected while hiding in the forest. In the dense forest, Xiaoyan saw 2 or 3 people separate from the 5-person squad. He hid in the darkness, carefully observing their movements. A moment later, Xiaoyan could determine that they seemed to be there not to hunt magical beasts, but actually to search for something. Thanks to the forest and the herb fluid on his body masking his scent, Xiaoyan successfully snuck past this mercenary squad and quietly followed them. After half a day of running and scouting, Xiaoyan finally had an accidental opportunity to learn the identity of this mercenary squad. Wolf Head Mercenary Group. TSK. It seems that killing their third leader truly stirred up a hornet's nest. After learning this news, Xiaoyan was slightly surprised. Damn it, I've been holding back for so long that my stomach is full of resentment. I must let you taste some misfortune. Hiding in the darkness, Xiaoyan looked at the 5-person squad slowly going deeper into the forest and said with a soft, cold laugh. Xiaoyan observed this squad for a long time. He was confident he could eliminate all 5 5-star Dou practitioners. Furthermore, since they had already entered the dense forest, he wasn't afraid of being discovered by other teams and being surrounded to death. Following this mercenary squad into the forest, Xiaoyan did not foolishly act immediately. Instead, he quietly hid in the trees, patiently and calmly waiting. Like a poisonous snake stalking its prey, Xiaoyan continued to tail this mercenary squad. The team finally stopped to rest. During this time, one mercenary slowly separated from the team and walked toward the pine tree. Turning behind the large tree, the mercenary had just pulled out his little penis when his vision went black. Immediately after, his throat felt a sharp pain, and he quickly lost consciousness. Not long after the mercenary went to pee, a shout of alarm suddenly erupted. Magical beast. 3rd-tier magical beast. Hearing the shout, the few mercenaries who were resting were instantly stunned. One of them turned his head, looking at his companion who had just shouted, and was bowing his head in panic. He cursed with a laugh, "You son of a bitch. Were you sucked dry by a woman last night? This is the outer area of the magical Beast Mountain range. Where the hell are you going to find a 3rd-tier magical?" Before the cursing finished, the mercenary who had been bowing his head rushed in front of him. A cold light flashed and violently erupted. The curse that the mercenary was uttering instantly froze in his throat. Like lightning, Xiaoyan dealt with one mercenary. The figure with his head bowed subtly moved. With a wave of his hand, a fierce suction force pulled the farthest mercenary back. The dagger in his hand shot out fiercely, violently plunging into the throat of the mercenary, who had just been pulled by the suction force. It's Xiao Yan. In just a short 10 seconds, 2 5-star Dou practitioners were killed by Xiao Yan. The 2 remaining mercenaries finally regained their senses. The older one suddenly kicked his companion beside him toward Xiao Yan and quickly rushed forward. His hand rapidly pulled a short flute from his sleeve and placed it to his mouth. Just as he was about to blow it, the black shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. A kick containing fierce force directly struck his chest. Pft! A mouthful of fresh blood wildly sprayed out from his mouth. Borrowing the counterforce, the mercenary's body streaked through the air in an arc. Using the last bit of his strength, he blew a short, sharp, jarring sound from the short flute in his mouth. As the sound from the short flute emerged, it diffused in all directions. With a grim expression, Xiao Yan completely eliminated the entire mercenary squad. He raised his head and looked toward the outside of the forest where figures had already started rushing in. Damn it, I underestimated those guys. Cursing softly, Xiao Yan quickly turned and ran. GG. While Xiao Yan was still turning, numerous shouts arose from the outside of the forest where the guard posts were. At this moment, all the mercenaries were rushing toward the forest. Catch him! A barrage of mercenaries desperately chased the figure that was half hidden and half visible. In front. A loud shout continuously echoed through the forest. Damn, that's a lot. Glancing at the huge number of pursuers behind him, Xiao Yan subtly curved his lips, shaking his head slightly in frustration. Then, with the help of the green fluid on his body, he constantly darted and weaved through the bushes, running away. After running a certain distance, Xiao Yan's expression suddenly changed. He turned his head and saw a middle-aged man with a grim expression wildly rushing at the front of the mercenary team. Seeing Xiao Yan turn his head, a cold smile flashed on his face. He lowered his head and growled, his voice penetrating through the bush and reaching Xiao Yan's ear. Little bastard, today I will bury you in this magical beast mountain range. The quiet magical beast mountain range was suddenly shattered by countless shouts and the sounds of pursuit and killing. The huge number of pursuers startled many mercenaries who were originally preparing to hunt magical beasts. Turning their heads and seeing the massive crowd, they also curiously followed. They wanted to see exactly which powerful figure could cause such a large-scale pursuit. Catch Xiao Yan. He has a Xian rank Do Qi technique on him. During the pursuit, Mushi looked at a mercenary team watching the spectacle. A sinister smile flashed on his face. He suddenly stretched his neck and roared. Hearing the leaders shout, the members of the wolf-head mercenary group behind him also very smartly shouted out loud the news that Xiao Yan possessed a Xian rank Do Qi technique spread throughout the mountain range. Xian rank Do Qi technique. The 4 words entered their ears and almost all the mercenary teams froze, glancing at each other. A look of greed flashing in their eyes. After a moment of silence, some finally couldn't resist the allure of the Xian rank Do Qi technique. They quickly grabbed their weapons and rushed after the half-hidden, half-visible figure. With one person taking the lead, the initially hesitant mercenaries also quickly followed suit, shouting loudly to join the pursuit team. Hearing the shouts coming from behind, Xiao Yan, who was running frantically, glanced back. Seeing the pursuit team growing larger and larger, his expression subtly changed. He whispered, "This bastard is truly sinister." Xiao Yan's footsteps moved rapidly through the forest. His eyes scanned the surroundings, searching for areas frequented by magical beasts, and he charged into them. Come on. I want to see if you have more people, or if there are more magical beasts here. Laughing coldly, Xiao Yan once again buried his head and rushed forward fiercely. Brat, I'll see how you escape today. Far behind. Mushi roared coldly. His voice, mixed with dou qi, echoed like a lion's roar through the forest. Xiaoyan ignored this non-threatening sound and only focused on rushing forward. Seeing Xiaoyan disregard his shout, Mushi subtly curved his lips. His eyes narrowed and he raised his eyebrows, looking at the distance that was gradually widening. Xiaoyan's current speed was a bit beyond his expectation. Slowly exhaling, Mushi's body slightly trembled. Pale green dou qi quickly enveloped his body. He lowered his head and roared from his throat, Huang rank dou technique. Wind wall steps. As soon as the shout finished, a large amount of pale green dou qi suddenly surged out from his two legs. Successive gusts of gentle wind formed around his two legs. Stamping his foot forcefully on the ground, Mushi's speed nearly doubled compared to before. Damn! Hearing the faint sound of wind whistling from behind, Xiaoyan quickly turned his head and saw Mushi rushing forward very quickly. He couldn't help but be startled. He shot a qi returning pill from his finger, quickly swallowed it, and the depleted dou qi slowly began to recover. I will kill you today. Looking at the gradually closing distance between the two of them, a fierce killing intent flashed on Mushi's ferocious face, and he said menacingly, Kill your mother. Turning his head and cursing, Xiaoyan suddenly threw his right hand backward and struck out. A fierce, invisible force erupted from his palm. Humph! Although the force was invisible, the leader could sense the wind pressure it caused. He snorted lightly, immediately swinging his fist forward. A gust of fierce wind instantly appeared in front of him, and violently erupted, finally clashing with the invisible force. Thud! The two fierce forces collided, directly destroying the grass below, and even some frail branches were snapped. He truly has some strength. No wonder he's so arrogant. This first exchange with Xiaoyan left a hint of astonishment in Mushi's eyes. He laughed coldly. His foot once again slammed the ground, and his body shot out more. Then 10 meters. Brat, die. Stomping his feet continuously, the distance between Mushi and Xiaoyan grew smaller and smaller. He grinned, looking at the youth running frantically in front of him. Die your mother. Xiaoyan's vulgar curse made Mushi's face turn green with anger. Tilting his head, Xiaoyan casually glanced at Mushi's grim expression, and the huge pursuit team not far behind him. Sighing helplessly, Xiaoyan clicked his tongue. His hands grabbed the heavy Xian ruler on his back. He stomped his foot and pulled it out. With a flip of his hand, he stored it in his storage ring. You keep chasing slowly. I'll play with you. Turning his head and laughing coldly, Xiaoyan's toe fiercely slammed the ground. His speed suddenly surged. His leaf-covered clothes instantly transformed into a cyan phantom, darting quickly into the dark forest like a cyan leopard. Looking at Xiaoyan's suddenly surging speed, Mushi's face changed. He felt it was unbelievable. With his strength as a 2-star wind-attributed Dou master, even after using his movement Dou technique, he still couldn't catch up to a Dou practitioner. This truly dealt him a blow. It seems he found a lot of good stuff in that cave. Not knowing the specific situation with Xiaoyan, he could only guess that there must have been some mysterious treasure in the cave. Thinking this, Mushi's determination to hunt down Xiaoyan intensified even more. Looking up at Xiaoyan, who had disappeared into the forest, Mushi's speed underfoot increased a few more points, and he plunged into the dark forest alone. Just as he rushed into the forest, a surge of chaotic force shot toward him, tearing the air. Mushi's expression subtly darkened. He drew the great saber from his waist, gathered his dou qi, and violently slashed out. Hiss! The sound of a sharp blade slicing through a body rang out, extremely jarring. Squeak! A miserable cry followed immediately. It turned out that Mushi's strike had hit something that looked like a first-tier magical beast, the blood-sucking rat. expressionlessly pulling the blade out of the blood-sucking rat's body. Mushi was about to move his foot toward the direction where the figure was running, when more than 10 blood-sucking rats frantically charged at him. Being hampered by a swarm of blood-sucking rats, Mushi's expression was somewhat ugly. Although these things couldn't harm him, they slowed down his pursuit speed. Just as Mushi was starting to get a headache, the large group of mercenaries behind him finally arrived. Seeing the leader being blocked by a swarm of blood-sucking rats, they immediately drew their weapons and intercepted and killed the swarm of blood-sucking rats. Chase him. Kicking the blood-sucking rat in front of him away, Mushi waved his hand and shouted coldly. Following Mushi's shout, the fruitless pursuit began again. The earth-shattering, noisy pursuit broke the silence of the entire mountain range. The culprit of all this was Xianxia. He shamelessly provoked the magical beasts in the mountain range continuously. As a result, the mercenaries chasing him not only failed to harm a single hair on him, but were also constantly attacked by various magical beasts, suffering no small casualties. When the pursuit continued until nearly noon without result, a small portion of the mercenaries finally grew tired of the endless chase and began to leave the pursuit team. As the mercenaries left, the scale of the pursuit team gradually weakened. In the end, only the members of the Wolf-Head mercenary group and a small number of others, who were driven mad by the lure of the Xian rank Do Qi technique, stubbornly persisted. Running for a while longer, feeling a slight soreness and numbness in his legs, Xianxia looked up at the solitary, flickering moon in the sky, forced a bitter smile. The person behind him was truly persistent, which was genuinely beyond his expectation. It seems we're about to enter the inner regions of the magical beast mountain range. Doesn't this bastard fear encountering high-rank magical beasts? Shaking his head in frustration, Xianxia turned back to look at Mushi's cold expression. He subtly curved his lips, inwardly cursing, madman. Mushi's gaze intensely followed the figure that was half hidden and half visible in the darkness ahead. Anxiety slowly rose in his heart. If he continued the pursuit, he would enter the inner regions of the magical beast mountain range. At that point, the guy could casually find a place to hide and shake them off. But with so many people, it would be difficult for them to hide. Just as he was hesitant about whether to retreat, Mushi noticed the figure running ahead suddenly stopped. He subtly raised his head, and then his face was filled with wild joy. Stomping his foot, his figure shot out fiercely. As his figure approached, Mushi finally discovered that not far ahead, a bottomless abyss had unexpectedly appeared, and just over 10 meters across was the inner region of the magical beast mountain range. No escape route. Haha, Xianxia, the pursuit ends here. Slowly standing a short distance from Xianxia, Mushi grinned and said. Waving his hand, a large number of mercenaries rushed from behind, forming a semicircle and trapping Xianxia. You are reading the novel copied at truyenful.vn. Looking grimly at the deep abyss in front of him, Xianxia smiled bitterly and shook his head. There were only 2 paths to enter the magical beast mountain range. Excluding those 2 paths, all other areas were surrounded by this kind of abyss. He hadn't expected that his random run would lead him to this very spot. Xianxia, hand over the item you found in the cave. Taking a step forward, Mushi said with a laugh. Do I really have to hand it over to you? Xiaoyan's gaze swept over the lone mercenaries in the surrounding team, and he suddenly smiled toward Mushi and said. Hearing Xiaoyan's words, the faces of some of the surrounding mercenaries instantly became unnatural. Most of them were lone mercenaries. They had expended so much effort chasing Xianxia, yet they didn't want all the benefits to be taken by the Wolf-Head mercenary group. Mushi's eyes coldly fixed on Xianxia. He knew Xiaoyan's intention to sow discord. His gaze swept over the surroundings and he said. Everyone, Xianxia killed over 10 members of the Wolf-Head mercenary group, and even Hammond died at his hands. This blood feud must be repaid with blood today. Furthermore, the item he stole in the cave was originally taken from my son, Muli. Today, we are merely retrieving what originally belonged to us. I implore everyone not to interfere. After this matter is concluded, Mushi will certainly reward you handsomely with gold. As Mushi's words left his mouth, everyone knew he had his own agenda. Clearly, he intended to monopolize the spoils. Mushi's sharp eyes swept over some of the lone mercenaries. He waved his hand, and the members of the wolf-head mercenary group quickly drew their weapons from their waists, then stared fiercely at some of the lone mercenaries with murderous intent. The wolf-head mercenary group had the numerical advantage. Although the lone mercenaries were extremely unwilling, they had no choice but to reluctantly retreat step by step. After chasing away the lone mercenaries, Mushi finally turned his cold gaze toward Xiaoyan. He tightly gripped the great saber in his hand and slowly advanced toward Xiaoyan. Hand over that item. I'll give you a quick death. Looking at Mushi's ferocious expression, Xiaoyan slightly shrugged and sighed. With a flip of his hand, the massive black heavy Xian ruler appeared in his grasp. He lightly lifted it and rested it on his shoulder. Slightly raising his head, a calm smile appeared on his handsome face. Come and take it if you dare. Looking at the young man who had suddenly calmed down, Mushi frowned and tightly gripped the great saber in his hand. He laughed coldly and said, I don't believe you can grow wings and fly away today. Taking long strides, Mushi slowly advanced toward Xiaoyan. When he was close enough, he suddenly stomped his foot. His figure shot out, and the great saber in his hand slashed down toward Xiaoyan. Sensing the sharp, wind-tearing force in front of him, Xiaoyan's face was completely solemn. A Do master and a Do practitioner were fundamentally two levels that were difficult to compare. With his current strength, he could barely withstand Mushi for more than 10 exchanges. Relying on his excellent evasion ability, Xiaoyan tilted his body. His rapid footsteps retreated, avoiding Mushi's probing attack. His feet spun, and he strangely appeared to Mushi's left. The Do Qi in his body circulated quickly. His right hand, holding the heavy Xian ruler, aimed at Mushi's head and fiercely smashed down. The fierce force coming down on his head did not overly alarm Mushi. The great saber in his hand was immediately lifted and struck upward. Clang! The black ruler and the great saber clashed. Sparks flew everywhere, and the crisp sound of metal echoed slowly over the deep abyss. This first exchange with a Do master expert allowed Xiaoyan to experience the level of a Do master's Do Qi. The force transmitted to the heavy Xian ruler was enough to make him retreat several steps before he could neutralize it. Compared to Xiaoyan, Mushi seemed much more relaxed. He only retreated half a step, and his body was already firmly stabilized. Leader, kill him. Avenge the third leader. Kill him. Seeing Xiaoyan fall into a disadvantage in one move, the members of the wolf-head mercenary group around him shouted excitedly. What a heavy weapon! A look of surprise flashed in his eyes. Mushi intensely stared at the black heavy ruler in Xiaoyan's hand, shaking his head and sighing in awe. He then laughed coldly and glanced at Xiaoyan. If you only have that much skill, then be sensible and hand over the item. Shaking his slightly sore and numb hand, Xiaoyan's cold eyes fixed on Mushi. The heavy ruler in his hand slowly lifted. He exhaled a mouthful of foul air, and then suddenly closed his eyes. Looking at Xiaoyan's bizarre action, Mushi frowned, somewhat wondering what the young brat was up to. The wolf-head mercenary group members surrounding Xiaoyan were also stunned by his movement, but after only a moment they stood with their arms crossed and watched, their eyes mocking, like watching a rat fall into the hands of a cat. They believed that no matter how Xiaoyan struggled this time, it would be absolutely difficult for him to escape the clutches of their leader, a two-star Do master. His dark eyes intensely stared at the closed-eyed Xiaoyan. A hint of unease flashed in Mu Shi's heart, especially when he suddenly felt the energy around him fluctuating fiercely. The unease became clearly visible on his face. Clutching the great saber tightly with both hands, the uneasy Mu Shi ignored the difference in status between the two sides. He cautiously and slowly advanced toward Xiaoyan. Looking at Mu Shi's solemn expression, the surrounding mercenaries also sensed a hint of something amiss. They exchanged glances, and the weapons in their hands were unconsciously gripped tighter. Playing tricks. Go die. Taking another step, Mu Shi entered the attack range. A look of ferocity appeared on his face, and the great saber in his hand, without hesitation, fiercely slashed toward Xiaoyan. Slow down. Xiaoyan's tightly closed eyes suddenly snapped open. He uttered an icy cold sound from his mouth. The heavy ruler in his hand suddenly lifted. The heat on the ruler's body slowly increased, which was the first time Xiaoyan had controlled it. Flame-splitting wave-devouring ruler. Following the shout in Xiaoyan's heart, the heaven and earth energy at the abyss suddenly circulated. Visible to the naked eye, countless streams of energy seemed to be attracted, frantically pouring into the heavy ruler in Xiaoyan's hand. And as the energy frantically poured in, the heavy ruler emitted an even more terrifying heat, becoming increasingly scorching hot. The bizarre lines on the ruler now radiated a crimson fire light. Simultaneously with the shout in his heart, the dou qi in Xiaoyan's body surged out like a tide. In just a moment, the abundant dou qi in his body had become empty. Sensing that the dou qi in his body was about to be completely depleted, Xiaoyan subtly moved his lips and swallowed a qi returning pill that he had hidden in his mouth. With the qi returning pill holding him steady, Xiaoyan finally had a bit of strength left to use. The heavy ruler in his hand had become a piece of fire-red object emitting terrifying heat. It streaked through the air, and then slashed horizontally toward Mu Shi, whose face was filled with horror. Where the ruler passed, the distant space seemed to evaporate and warp. After Xiaoyan poured the last trace of dou qi into the heavy Xian ruler, a light suddenly flashed on the ruler's tip. A crimson, half-meter-long crescent of light, like lightning, separated from the heavy ruler. It carried astonishing heat, and fiercely struck toward Mu Shi. Within his sight, a patch of crimson light flashed. The moment the crimson crescent of light shot out from the heavy ruler, Mu Shi's pupils suddenly contracted like needle points. The solidification of dou qi into an external form. That was something only possible for a dou master or above to achieve. The young man in front of him was only at the dou practitioner level. How could he unleash such a perfect solidified dou qi attack? The shock in his heart only flashed briefly. Mu Shi didn't have time to ponder this incomprehensible problem. The dou qi in his body surged out. A pale cyan dou qi adhered to the great saber, as if coating the blade with a thin layer of cyan energy. Wind blade saber rain. Taking a deep breath, Mu Shi's great saber wildly danced in his hand. After images of the cyan great saber appeared continuously, one after another. They looked as if they were forming a dense network of blades in front of Mu Shi. This wind blade saber rain was the highest grade dou technique that Mu Shi was capable of mastering, Xian rank. Low grade. With this dou technique, he had been hailed as the #1 expert in Xingshan town several times. And now, facing Xiaoyan's mysterious and bizarre attack, Mu Shi was extremely cautious. To be safe, he directly employed his strongest technique. The crimson crescent of light arrived in a flash. The surrounding mercenaries, watching, did not even have time to clearly see what the crimson light was before a thunderous sound erupted. Boom! Following the thunderous sound, mud scattered into the air where Mu Shi was standing. Immediately after, a figure suddenly shot out from the mud. His 2 feet were firmly plunged into the ground. After being repelled for more than 10 steps, his body finally heavily crashed into a large tree. Instantly, the large tree collapsed with a loud crash. Only then did the figure slowly stop. Everyone's eyes looked at the figure and instantly sucked in a cold breath. The figure, who was battered to this extent, was none other than the great Dou master Mu Shi. His eyes intensely stared at Mu Shi, whose face was pale and held a look of terror. Everyone swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Then, by unspoken agreement, they turned their gaze toward the area where the mud had scattered. They only saw successive fissures spreading out. After extending for more than 10 meters, they slowly stopped. And in the center, a half-meter deep, 1-meter wide pit appeared, shocking everyone's hearts. You are reading the novel copied at truyenful.vn. Looking at the glaring pit, and then at Mu Shi's pale face, the entire abyss area fell into silence. Everyone's minds were in a daze. A person whose strength was only around 8-star Dou practitioner could actually force a great Dou master who had unleashed a Xian-ranked Dou technique into such a pathetic state. The brutal truth made the corners of everyone's mouths twitch as if they were suffering from cramps. The mud filling the air finally completely dissipated, and the silhouette of the young man holding the heavy ruler also slowly appeared in everyone's sight. The young man's face was also slightly pale. His 2 hands slowly stroked the black ruler. The fervor in his pitch-black pupils sent a chill down people's spines. Although unleashing this D-rank Dou technique almost put Xiao Yan at risk of a backlash, its power filled Xiao Yan's heart with joy. The gap between a Dou practitioner and a Dou master had been bridged by the terrifying might of this D-rank Dou technique. Violently coughing a few times, Xiao Yan once again took out a qi-returning pill and tossed it into his mouth. His cold eyes fixed on the surrounding mercenaries. Under this shock, those who were looked at fearfully averted their gaze. Kill him. Attack. Mu Shi violently pushed away the mercenary who was helping him. Fresh blood sprayed from his palms, almost soaking his sleeves. His face was filled with a nearly insane ferocity. Xiao Yan's displayed strength at this moment caused a surge of fear to rise in the heart of this leader, who had experienced many storms. So young, not only did he possess such rapid strength growth, but he also possessed a mysterious Dou technique with immense power. This kind of enemy was truly everyone's nightmare. If there was a medicine for regret in the world, Mu Shi would be willing to never provoke this mysterious young man again. Of course, there was no such medicine in the world, so the fear in Mu Shi's heart naturally and logically transformed into frantic killing intent. Only by killing Xiao Yan could he truly feel at ease. At this moment, Mu Shi had even cast aside the thought of the treasures Xiao Yan carried. Kill him. He's like a lamp running out of oil now. Mu Shi shouted. Hearing the leader's command, the surrounding mercenaries hesitated for a moment, but then had no choice but to tightly grip the weapons in their hands. They cautiously surrounded Xiao Yan. You must die today. Mu Shi's voice was ferocious as he intensely stared at the young man standing by the cliff. Sorry, it might not be as you wish. Raising his head to look at Mu Shi's face, which was distorted by anger, Xiao Yan's pale face flushed slightly. His body slightly trembled. A pair of black eagle wings, about half a meter long, suddenly and bizarrely shot out from his back. Seeing the eagle wings behind Xiao Yan, everyone was shocked once again. Xiao Yan's 2 wings shook. He immediately jumped down into the deep abyss. His wings flapped rapidly a few times, and then, under everyone's astonished gaze, he brazenly flew toward the opposite cliff face. I will remember today's encirclement and killing, Xiao Yan. I will surely repay it in full someday. The young man's silhouette slowly disappeared into the darkness, but his calm, cold laughter continuously echoed in the air. Controlling his body, which was swaying precariously, Xiao Yan endured the shock and managed to cross the dozens of meters of the abyss. Before he could land on the opposite side, the dou qi in his body showed signs of depletion. The purple cloud wings, which were flying rapidly, retracted with a hiss. Instantly, the figure in midair let out a tragic cry, and fell straight down onto a soft patch of grass below. His body, already at its limit, suffered another impact. Xiaoyan's vision faded to black, and he finally completely lost consciousness. After Xiaoyan lost consciousness, old Man Yao finally floated out of the storage ring. Looking at the battered Xiaoyan, he shook his head helplessly. He grabbed Xiaoyan's hand and lifted him up, then slowly walked deeper into the magical beast. Mountain range. He dared to forcefully use a D-rank dou technique. He's truly an audacious fellow. Lost in the darkness, Xiaoyan vaguely felt his entire body was submerged in cold fluid. Gentle, calm energy streams continuously entered his body through countless pores, silently flowing inside. Wherever the energy passed, the meridians, which were slightly damaged from overusing dou qi, were slowly being healed. After healing his meridians and body to a stable state, the gentle energy streams followed the meridians, finally pouring into the dou qi whirlpool in his lower abdomen. With the sudden addition of new life, the originally sluggishly rotating dou qi whirlpool accelerated its rotation, as if fueled by a high-speed engine. And as the dou qi whirlpool's rotation speed increased, the energy flowing in the meridians was further attracted, surging toward the dou qi whirlpool like a swarm of bees. Even after the dou qi whirlpool completely absorbed all the energy in the meridians, it still greedily refused to stop. The dou qi whirlpool rapidly spun a few more times, then emitted an even more fierce suction force, drawing more and more energy hidden in the external fluid. This energy was then refined through the meridians and slowly poured into the dou qi whirlpool. Xiaoyan did not know how long this continuous absorption lasted in his unconscious state. He only had a vague sense of it. Only when the energy infusion gradually weakened and stopped completely could his consciousness break free from the darkness. His hazy eyes slowly opened. The first thing he saw was a relatively large mountain cave. Moonlight stones were embedded on the surrounding walls, emitting a gentle glow. When he moved his body slightly, he heard the sound of rushing water. Looking down, Xiaoyan finally discovered that he was lying in a small rock pool filled with cold water, but the water contained faint traces of green, indicating that it was not ordinary water. Waving his hand in the water a few times, Xiaoyan realized that this pale green liquid contained quite a lot of pure energy. Taking a small amount of the liquid to his nose and sniffing, Xiaoyan said with some surprise in a low voice, "This is medicinal fluid." "That's right, it's medicinal fluid. It took me 3 or 4 days to set up this small spirit liquid pool to treat you." The old voice came from outside the cave. Old Man Yao's ethereal figure floated in. Walking to the rock pool, Old Man Yao looked Xiaoyan up and down with a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. He smiled and said, "I initially thought you'd need at least half a month to recover, but I didn't expect you to be completely fine in just 5 days. Moreover, you've turned misfortune into a blessing and touched the gate of 7-star dou practitioner. Judging by your current state, you should be able to reach 7-star dou practitioner with just a few more days of cultivation." "I was unconscious for 5 days. Hearing that, Xiaoyan opened his eyes wide and said in surprise, "MHM. Nodding, Old Man Yao glared at him and scolded with a frown. "You little brat, you clearly could have immediately used your purple cloud wings to escape, but you had to show off and forcefully use that D-rank dou technique. If I hadn't helped you activate the purple cloud wings, I fear you wouldn't even have the strength left to run." Smiling sheepishly, Xiaoyan smiled bitterly and said helplessly, "All right, I admit I really wanted to test whether using the D-rank dou technique could defeat a dou master, so I took the risk and stayed." "You call that thing you used a D-rank dou technique? Don't be so alarming." Rolling his eyes at Xiaoyan, Old Man Yao curled his lip and said. Smiling awkwardly, Xiaoyan didn't dare to argue. His gaze swept around the mountain cave and he asked, "Are we currently inside the magical beast mountain?" Range. This is a location I meticulously chose. I've swept away all the high-rank magical beasts nearby. You can move freely within a radius of a few hundred meters, but you must be careful of any low-rank magical beasts that might wander in. Any random thing here can kill you. Nodding, Old Man Yao reminded him. Nodding helplessly, Xiaoyan slowly stood up from the rock pool, clumsily grabbing the clothes on the side and putting them on. How long do we have to stay here? Jumping out of the rock pool, the abundant dou qi in his body invigorated Xiaoyan. He threw a set of punches and tilted his head to ask. Until you become a dou master. Old Man Yao threw Xiaoyan's storage ring to him, and said casually. You should peacefully cultivate here during this period. As for revenge, you can talk about that after you become a dou master. Furthermore, don't let your alchemy skills regress. The magical beast mountain range has abundant medicinal ingredients. Feel free to find some things to concoct. It'll save me the trouble of having to concoct medicinal pills for you every time. Looking at Xiaoyan taking out the heavy Xian ruler from the storage ring and putting it on his back, Old Man Yao said. Grinning, Xiaoyan nodded. With the heavy Xian ruler on his back, he slowly walked out of the mountain cave. In the secluded shelter, separated from the pursuing crowds outside, Xiaoyan was no longer disturbed. He focused on his cultivation. The dou qi in his body became increasingly pure, like fine aged wine. After 3 days of quiet cultivation, Xiaoyan, as expected, broke through to 7-star dou practitioner. This breakthrough was effortless, almost as smooth as water flowing into a river. Xiaoyan was delighted with the increase in his strength. After breaking through to 7-star dou practitioner, Xiaoyan's dou qi cultivation gradually slowed down. Breaking through each stage in the final 3 ranks was extremely difficult, so the remaining 2 stages could only be allowed to progress naturally. Being overly eager could sometimes backfire. Although the time spent on dou qi cultivation decreased significantly, Xiaoyan dedicated most of his time to cultivating dou techniques. About 100 meters from the mountain cave, there was a waterfall that Old Man Yao had meticulously selected. After becoming a 7-star dou practitioner and practicing there for over 10 days, Xiaoyan finally met Old Man Yao's basic requirement for using the D-rank dou technique. Climbing out of the water beneath the waterfall, Xiaoyan dried himself. He had completed the first important task. Letting out a long sigh of relief, the heavy feeling on his shoulders became much lighter. Now, Xiaoyan could confidently use the D-rank dou technique, unlike before when he almost suffered an embarrassing backlash. Xiaoyan sat on a large rock next to the waterfall, leisurely basking in the sun. He took out the alchemy cauldron he had bought in Wuten City from his storage ring, and then took out a large pile of medicinal ingredients, filling a patch of ground. Looking at the alchemy cauldron in front of him, Xiaoyan rubbed his hands. His left hand gently spread open. With a subtle mental command, a stream of dou qi separated from the dou qi whirlpool and moved to his palm. With a resounding thwomp, the dou qi was bizarrely transformed into a deep yellow flame after passing through the alchemy cauldron, slowly rising within the alchemy cauldron. Looking at the flame, whose color was even deeper than before, Xiaoyan smiled in satisfaction. When the alchemy cauldron was adequately heated, his right hand began to select the various medicinal ingredients in front of him. For this round of alchemy, Xiaoyan did not use any of Old Man Yao's formulas. One must know that every genuine alchemist wished to personally research and concoct formulas. Alchemists who primarily rely on trading formulas are often looked down upon. Therefore, every alchemist dedicates effort to researching the fusion of various medicinal ingredients to create their own unique formulas, and naturally, the higher the rank, the better. His hand swept across the over 100 types of medicinal ingredients in front of him. Xiaoyan stopped and picked up a red fruit that emitted a peculiar fragrance. The serpent lust fruit only grows in dark places where high-rank magical snakes mate. The nature of snakes is lustful, so this fruit also possesses a medicinal power that stimulates lust. After selecting the serpent lust fruit, Xiaoyan successively selected 7 or 8 more medicinal ingredients, all of which, without exception, had stimulating effects. Seeing Xiaoyan practicing alchemy, Old Man Yao also secretly and gently floated out of the storage ring. However, after seeing the ingredients Xiaoyan selected, Old Man Yao frowned, remaining silent and standing behind him. Having selected the ingredients, Xiaoyan first placed the red fruit into the alchemy cauldron. Controlling the flame, he quickly burned the red fruit until it dried. The red fruit then turned into powder. Concentrating all his attention on the alchemy cauldron, Xiaoyan tossed in a 7-leaf flower that was pink, and was also called the desire flower, because the scent it emitted often caused nearby magical beasts to thrash and roar. After burning the desire flower into powder, Xiaoyan tossed in all the remaining medicinal ingredients. He then mixed the 7 or 8 different colored powders together, added some liquid extracted from the desire flower, and the powdered mixture completely merged, forming a kind of reddish pink liquid. Using high-temperature flame again, he burned the liquid dry, transforming it into a handful of pale white powder floating in the alchemy cauldron. Looking at the resulting white powder, Xiaoyan grinned. He lifted the alchemy cauldron, and with a suction force from his hand, all the medicinal powder was collected into the jade bottle in his hand. You are reading the novel copied at truyenful.vn. Looking at the item he had personally concocted for the first time, Xiaoyan couldn't wait. He lightly dipped his finger in the powder and put it to his tongue. Phew! Heh. Success! The medicinal powder entered his mouth, and Xiaoyan instantly felt a slight dryness and heat throughout his body. He used Dou Qi to suppress the feeling of dryness and heat. Xiaoyan's face was smiling, revealing a somewhat rare look of mischief. Cough. A familiar old cough sounded from behind, making Xiaoyan's face flush. He hurriedly put away the transparent jade bottle and stood up. Don't hide it. Isn't it just concocting an aphrodisiac? Many male alchemists concoct this as their first formula. Heh, men will be men. Contrary to his expectation, Old Man Yao did not scold him. Instead, he teased him with a laugh. Slightly stunned, Xiaoyan finally sighed in relief. He turned back to look at Old Man Yao, and laughed mischievously. Master, did you also concoct this when you started? Hearing that, Old Man Yao's aged face flushed. He waved his sleeve in slight embarrassment and anger. Do you think I'm as improper as you are? Looking at Old Man Yao's demeanor, Xiaoyan understood in his heart. The corners of his mouth curved up. Just as he stood up to put away his things, a sudden fierce energy fluctuation and a wild lion's roar, like rolling thunder, abruptly rang out in the sky. Hearing the lion's roar containing ferocity, Old Man Yao's aged face slightly changed. His eyes intensely stared at the far-off sky, which was where the wild energy was emanating from. And with his sharp eyes, Old Man Yao seemed to vaguely see the graceful figure of a woman. That is the roar of a 6th-tier magical beast. The amethyst-winged lion king. Who would dare to provoke it? 6th-tier magical beast. His pupils slightly contracted. Xiaoyan swallowed a mouthful of saliva. That's equivalent to a human dough. Huang-level expert, Who has the courage to stroke the tiger's whiskers like that? Thank you for listening to the story on KTN Storyverse. Please like, share, and subscribe to enjoy more amazing stories.